Okay, so welcome everybody to the work session of January 11th, 2018. And here we are again. December, sorry. And I'm looking at it. Right there.
Wishing it was something else.
I don't know.
Just for the accuracy of the record.
We've been together a lot for the last week. It's totally awesome. So before we get going with our traffic presentation, I'm not going to introduce everybody. I didn't want to introduce Nicole West Coast, president of Whole Foods, is here tonight. And thank you and welcome to Newcastle.
Thank you.
I'm sorry my back is to you.
That's okay.
So, Lou, take it away.
Hi. How is everyone? Okay. I'm sorry. I'm going to look out this way because I have a screen in front of me also. It's like a teleprompter almost. So I wanted to start off from where we left off as a group, and that was from last Friday when we had a meeting. And so I listened to comments and concerns that both boards had. We prepared an initial memo that was reviewed by Newcastle, both the town board and the planning board, and our focus was on the NPT plan, along with other recommendations to perfect or improve the NPT plan from a safety and operations standpoint. And we prepared our memo and it's dated December 8th. And we also reviewed the most recent revised NPT plan that was dated December 10th by the applicant. And so that brings us to now. The key elements of the plan, there are two parts. One is safety and the other is level of service. So from a safety standpoint, this plan includes a pedestrian crosswalk, pedestrian lighting, police presence, no active construction during this NPT plan, designated walkway from the existing bus stop location to the proposed crosswalk on the north side of the intersection. We also call for temporary pedestrian signal heads with push buttons, and we do understand that that would take a little bit of time to get in place. And in the interim, police presence would be out there. We're also advocating for no northbound left turn lane, no turn on red signs for the southbound right turn. Do not block the intersection signs along with variable message signs at the site driveway and Annandale Drive. So those are some of the key elements, not all the elements that are in this revised NPT plan, but certainly the key elements. And we're going to walk through that to a certain level, and then the second part of this is the level of service. You know, how would it work? How does it operate? And we're going to go through that as well. So at this point, I know that you have been given the latest submission that's here, and this is what you have is the response from the applicant to our memo, going condition by condition from phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. And so there's really two ways we could do this. One is we can go over each one of the comments with respect to the plan that I'll keep up on the board, and you obviously have the written in front of you, and we could do it that way. And that's probably the best way to do it. And furthermore, a lot of what has been asked as a condition has been responded by the applicant as they agree. And maybe some of them we don't have to go through, maybe we have to go through all of them. I leave that up to the board to make that determination. But we certainly can go through each one of them and cross-reference what's up on the screen, and we can zoom in to this as we need to. And it'll be pretty clear, which is also good. So, with that, I think the very first thing then is to go through. We go right to phase 1, Nick? Is that what?
Yeah,
we should do? We'll go right to phase 1, which is on page 2. In phase 1, condition 1 The applicant agrees, and this is that the occupancy of the office use on site must be maintained at no more than 50% of the office space, excluding the space deferred to the town's board's finding statement. The applicant shall provide documentation of such, and the applicant agreed to that. Condition 2 is to install a concrete or jersey barrier along the southbound right turn lane on 117 abutting the one existing utility pole as reflected in the plan. And you can see that in the plan. The jersey barrier is this dark gray, and the pole is actually right in this corner. So what is new to this plan is these barrels that are out in front that are sand-filled barrels, which is a normal MPT device, and that really is protection from someone that's traveling in the northbound direction, so they don't hit that corner and that corner where the pole is head on. And so that is certainly acceptable as a method. And again, this phase 1 is with the utility pole, specifically that pole in place at the intersection corner there. Condition 3 is to install a series of no right turn on red signs along the southbound. And what we have here is a no turn on red sign that's right as you get into this right turn lane. And this no turn on red sign that's at the intersection approach. Our response back to the applicant is this sign should be a little bit more oversized. We're probably looking at a 32 by 46 sign, more of a construction sign, right in your face type of sign, so that when you're coming to this approach and you're in the right turn lane, you don't make that right turn on red. And we can go into why we think that is important, but I think most people agree after explanation that it does make sense as far as the operation and safety of the intersection is concerned, specifically with respect to the crosswalk itself. Item 4 is to remove the proposed northbound 117 exclusive left turn lane. And so that was done for really two solid reasons. One is the northbound left turn bay that would have been maybe 2 or 3 car lengths. I did not feel it was long enough or appropriate because it was short. And it did not line up as far as alignment is concerned with the southbound through movement. It was probably about a 5 or 6 foot misalignment, and we thought that, and board members also thought that that was a safety concern. The last reason behind this also is if we had a left turn bay in here, and certainly when March or April comes around and you're ready to do this retaining wall, we didn't want to have a left turn bay in and then have to take it out because we needed some room to put in the retaining wall. So for a bunch of reasons, we actually are recommending not having it and having a 13-foot shared lane that would be in the northbound direction.
What we wanted to do was also, sorry for interruption, Lou, what Christina is distributing is a revised submission from the applicant that responds to the comments that we gave to them this morning after we reviewed the plans, such as Lou mentioned the need for an oversized no right turn on red sign. So I don't want to further confuse everyone with paperwork, but this is the latest plans, and we suspect that in the public hearing they'll go through tonight and explain those. But if you have this in front of you, certainly look at it and you'll be able to follow along. It's an updated version of what Lou has up on the screen.
Hopefully it will encompass all the comments that we will go over that came up today.
So this is different from what you have up on the screen?
And
Staff has reviewed the submission, the updated submission from today, both Bob and myself. It is responsive to all of the staff concerns this morning, so the applicant has wholeheartedly agreed to make all of the modifications that the town has requested to date.
As we go through, Sabrina, would it be helpful if staff, if you told us, if we come to a section where there's something different from what we have in our written materials that came from this morning's meeting, would you just point it out to us so we can follow?
Absolutely, and Lou can do that as well.
And can we also, excuse me, to the extent that this latest drawing differs from what's up there, there's two different drawings, right? You could be sure to like point, there may be a minor difference, but to point that out to us as well.
Lou, what I can do, right before this meeting,
So, for
so I can
example,
follow along, check the plan while you take a walk.
right, so for example, the enlarged no right turn on red sign is now reflected on the top of the new plan as being a larger sign than it was originally and larger than the one that is shown to the right.
Do you have a summary of what changes came from staff this morning?
I have my notes, which I can kind of summarize for you if you want. I mean, it's.
So, well, I think Lou's gonna mention what it is. Right, Lou
Yeah,
will mention what the
there-
changes
there
were.
for-
first for the
Let me
notes.
give you an example. There's two examples that stick out from, it is a matter of enlarging one of the signs, the EMS signs that they committed to providing.
Okay.
Enlarging one of them.
I have the news plan on the screen.
Okay. Great.
You ask and we get these things done. This is just, it's very easy, obviously. Okay, so this sign is 36 by 48, it's a larger sign. And I think that's the only other thing, right, at this point.
Well, I just did
That's
have
a
a
phase two
question,
plan.
which is the crosswalk. I just looked at the pictures that were given to us at the back of it. I thought we were talking about having
That's phase two.
the crosswalk integrated into the lighting system. Cause right now, into the traffic light. No?
Just before you answer, that's
Hold
phase
on,
two.
this is
Above
phase
drawing.
two, hold on.
Did you get the phase one drawing if you have it?
I should have, this one.
Should see the same barrels.
Yep.
Enter in without the pole removed.
There we go.
Now, is that the latest?
We can tell by the larger no turn on red sign, so
That's
yeah.
what we have here.
That was a printout that was handed out just a
Just
moment
hand
ago.
it out.
Okay,
Okay, good.
I'm sorry, your question?
No, I was just looking at this picture, right? Which is, yes, good for pedestrians, but I thought we were going to try and integrate the intersection traffic light as part of this, are we?
No, I think these pedestrian signal heads, I don't think we're there yet, but the pedestrian signal heads, temporary signal heads, would be temporary. They're movable, because we can't put in foundations at this point, right? We can't do they can't do the permanent work at this point.
So when did the temporary go in?
The temporary would take 2 to 3 weeks to rent and get them installed and wired to the signal controller.
So we'd be in operation with police control of
That's
the
right.
intersection for
In-
2 to 3 weeks?
In the interim, right.
But it does say, I think, that the pedestrian signal heads need DOT approval. So do we expect to get DOT approval in 2 to 3 weeks?
Well, that'd be a
Knowing-
miracle.
So that's something I guess we would have to talk to Mazer about and, have a conversation with DOT. In my opinion, it wouldn't have to be approved by DOT because, number one, it's a temporary condition, but number two, we're putting the temporary pedestrian signal heads in the exact location that the permanent signal heads would be in.
But they
So-
still would control the light at the intersection to make an all-walk phase where no traffic moved to let the pedestrians cross?
That's right, when the button is pushed,
Right, pedestrian activated, right?
right,
And that's 3 weeks plus or minus away.
yes.
Did you say it was 2 or 3 weeks to rent this? How long does it take to install?
It takes a day to install, it should not take that long to install.
But we have to resolve the issue of whether DOT needs to approve the temporary use of them.
Yes, and I think the applicant should be in contact with DOT and share this latest plan with them to let them know what's happening.
So in the event that DOT permission is needed and DOT approval does not happen, what is the backup plan for the 4
Okay,
or
hang on,
5
I'll
month
put you on the
duration?
table, hold
I
on.
can't hear. Sheila, I can't hear you, I'm
Excuse me,
sorry.
Lou. We have the temporary signal heads already, they're being delivered tomorrow. And we're
There we go.
coordinating with the DOT in terms of the timing, but we're ready, they'll be up and running by Thursday or Friday, it's not weeks away. We have them, and along with the radar,
Perfect.
BMS signs.
Sounds good to
And DOT has approved it?
We're coordinating with them,
So you're coordinating that with DOT, but they have to still give their sign off on it?
Well, we've asked them for their input, but we can go ahead and install. Our electricians are ready to put the signal heads in on Thursday. I'm sorry, tomorrow.
So, I need to get stuck on this one point, but if and when this happens, does that mean that we no longer need the police control at that intersection? Is that no longer required? Is that what
No,
you're saying?
we would still need the police at the intersection, mainly for the vehicular traffic and the pedestrian traffic, but now the pedestrian traffic has an additional layer where you push the button, you have your own signal time to cross the intersection.
that's
For clarity
all-
purposes, you're ready on Thursday to install it, and it's your position,
We're installing tomorrow, Jason.
right? And you're ready to install it, but it's your position that you don't need DOT approval, that's my,
I'm listening to what Lou said on that, but we have reached out to DOT as a courtesy to let them know that we're gonna install it.
Put it in and
have
find
they
out.
responded?
We'll hopefully hear from them first thing tomorrow morning, but they will be installed tomorrow.
And Lou, that's a all-way stop, right? It's a red all sides, right?
Right, all the
When-
signal
when it's
heads will
pushed.
be red when the pedestrian signal is activated, that's right.
Well, that's a great improvement.
And whenever it's
What's there
activated.
now, so. And I like the idea, you go ahead, it's, you can always say you're sorry later, so if there's a change.
I like it.
Don't use it here, please.
I'm sorry.
Don't use it.
Don't take that call.
And that's not official
Get
advice
one.
from the town.
No, it's not legal advice at all, no, it's just,
Luckily, it's not being taped.
We're gonna have to watch you.
Okay,
Alright,
we have a big agenda.
So condition number 5 was to have a 13-foot wide northbound lane that's a shared lane, and the receiving lane going in the southbound direction is 14 feet. And so this 13-foot lane is wide enough for trucks and buses and cars, but not wide enough for people to make their own de facto left turn lane. So that's why we selected a width of that nature.
So let me ask about that, because it seems to me that, I think the AASHTO standards are for a freeway like 11-foot lanes,
A freeway is 12 foot.
12 foot,
Yeah.
okay? But that's like a design, it's like a posted speed of 55, 65, but a design speed of like 80, right? So I'm wondering why for this category of roadway, we would have a travel lane, because I think the wider it is, the more it encourages people to go fast. And why it isn't if it's more of a standard lane width, which would be, I guess, 11 in this case, it gives us more room on the sidewalk side for the bus stop and the pedestrian crossing for people to stand, and room maybe, I think, putting some kind of permanent barricade instead of these little pedestrian stanchions on an arterial road where people, if they can't go fast, they're gonna go fast.
Right, I think what's out there now might be a 12-foot wide lane, or what was out there is a 12-foot wide lane. I personally would like to keep the 13-foot and a 13-foot receiving lane and have them be the same. I don't know we gain that much by narrowing this down to 11-foot. I was okay with an 11-foot travel lane, but I'd rather have a 12 or 13, mainly during the MPT plan. Everything should be going slower, but when we have snow, when we have other things that are happening at the intersection, I would still recommend having at least a 13, maybe a 12-foot, but a 13-foot lane, not down to 11, my opinion.
And because the 11 constrains,
The 11 is a little tight for truck traffic, for bus traffic.
but it's a standard arterial, it's standard. I don't understand, I'm sorry, I guess I'm not hearing the real reason why, because this is a standard lane width for,
The standard lane width is 12 feet
okay.
at any level, any road.
Okay.
So
Well,
going to 11 is somewhat restrains the capacity of the roadway. And I'd rather err on the side of having
Okay.
one additional
So
foot.
just for the record, I'm in favor of a narrower lane width because I think it's safer. Not only for the cars traveling on the road and the opposing traffic and, the intersection itself, because I think people would be driving slower, but also it gives us more room on what's a very, very constrained sidewalk condition. I've been out there, I was out there 3 times walking lately, just to understand, walking that side of the street. It's pretty nasty out there. I mean, the topography's tough, right? the dimension is tough, from the pavement to where the topography drops off. And unless there are provisions to expand that and protect that better, I think that condition along this, it's really an arterial where people will drive fast if they can, is a problem.
I actually wanted to build on that comment too, and Lou, maybe you can just describe how the road, the shoulder, and the stone dust path will all interact, because I'm not convinced that having the delineators there and a white line or whatever is painted on the road is enough to protect the pedestrians who we are now encouraging with a bus stop there and a crosswalk there and a pedestrian signal head there. We're now encouraging the pedestrian traffic to come. So I'm wondering what more can be done, if we can put concrete barriers, and I agree with you, where the road drops off there, it's very easy to lose your footing, and
In the snow?
in the snow, and you tumble over and you're right by this is a major artery around here on 17.
So what is shown is a 13-foot lane, a 2-foot shoulder, right? And that's carried throughout the intersection itself, and the receiving lane on this side is 13 feet also. So part of this is this left-hand turn, or this left turn lane comes into the northbound direction, and having a receiving lane that's 11 feet is a little tight, pretty tight actually. So having a 12-foot or a 13-foot receiving lane is more appropriate as far as the receiving lane is concerned. Having even if this was 11 feet that was going to open up into 13 feet, then we would have some type of taper in this direction. I'm not saying that this could not be reduced to 11 feet. I don't know if you gain that area to put in a concrete barrier. You need at least 2 feet to place that. And then that would be from the existing bus stop to the existing or the proposed crosswalk.
So just so, I'm sorry, the 3 feet, which is, I don't have the 3 feet right there, where your
This one.
cursor is, yeah, what does that denote?
I think this is in the intersection itself is a 3-foot stripe line that the delineators placed in, right? There's a stripe line on one side, the delineators, and then the stripe line on the other side, where the walkway is on this side of the pair striping.
So could you back it out a second?
So that's 3 feet wide, that area of delineation?
Yes.
So it's 13 feet plus 3 feet? That's 16 feet?
13 feet plus 2 feet plus 3 feet, right?
Well, no, it's on this
13.
side, right, you have 13 feet plus the 2-foot shoulder, and then that shoulder widens out a little bit in the intersection
So
itself.
3 feet, and then the walkway area from
From here?
yeah,
Yeah.
the width of that?
So there's no width of the walkway unless
We don't know what it
I'm
is.
missing it. 4-inch white line. You don't have a width of the walkway. You guys, John, do you know what that is in the back?
We're no less than 3 feet and it tapered up to as much as 4, right?
Right, near the crosswalk,
The
right?
walkway.
The walkway's probably gonna be about 4 feet wide.
So can I just make a suggestion that before we actually approve anything, we know what that is? And we maybe, if we don't even know what it is, I don't know why, I'm sorry, we don't know. We're hearing and we're guessing. I think we need to see it, and if we're talking about a condition we don't know and then putting stone dust on a condition we don't know with these little floppy, I think that we need to attack this problem from both sides. One is from the automobile and equally from the pedestrian side, and see if we can resolve those things.
So I want to ask if something would be possible. So you said you have a 3-foot separation there where you show the yellow line and the delineators, and you
Right.
said you needed 2 feet for concrete barriers. So what if you had the concrete barriers with those reflectors on top, like you see on the highway? They're not the prettiest looking thing, but they would still alert the drivers with the reflection, and they would provide a protection for the pedestrians on the side there. And that would still give you your travel lane.
The applicant can come up with a plan that would look at putting in a concrete barrier in this area to protect the walkway on this side. The only thing that I would point out is that both On the northbound side here, the concrete barrier could probably be angled so that it wasn't a safety issue on one side after the bus stop or on the south side of the bus stop. And there has to be some kind of treatment on the north side here so that if a southbound vehicle were to hit it, it would not be a problem. So maybe on the safety side, really only on this north side would there be a safety issue
So,
that you have to deal with.
somehow we jumped to concrete barriers, there are a lot of different kinds of metal.
Oh, that was the
barriers.
question.
Yeah, well,
I'm sorry, okay.
but please go ahead,
Fair
and what
enough,
other
but
kind of
there are
barriers
other
would there
things that
be?
take less room, you know, there, obviously, we've seen them all, and maybe we really need to attack it from the pedestrian point of view and see if we can figure out how to solve what I think is a problem.
I think it would be best if we set forth the standards that we wanna see. Do we want to see a separation of 3 feet between the pedestrians and the automobiles and 4 feet for the walkway, et cetera? And then the applicant has just gotta solve for those requirements. I'm not sure what those requirements are, but I'm hearing some very interesting thoughts here, and I don't think we should be asking for designs at this point. I think we should be saying, this is what you have to figure out and do it this way. And Lou, you just have to tell us that that's okay and safe and preferred, not preferred, et cetera.
Well, we can come back with a concrete barrier and then we can come up with something
Steel.
that's different, yes. We can come up with that.
As thin as it can be to do the job.
The one thing I would contribute, and my name's Don Tone, I work with Sam Schwartz, is that we also reviewed the bus schedule. The bus runs maybe once or twice an hour, not all night long. And the scheduling of the bus, with the exception of one bus that arrives at maybe 6:40 in the morning, the activity of the bus will coincide with the presence of the police officer that'll be on site.
Yeah, I think the last bus is like 6:04 p.m.
You know, it's not just the bus, the passengers from the bus, who of course are a very important consideration, but you know, you may not be aware of this, but with the high school over there,
Right.
there's a lot of activity that comes across. My kids were both on the cross-country and the spring track teams, and they did their running on the other side of 117 every day after school in the you know, in the fall and in the spring. 50 or 60 kids on the team would somehow make their way across that intersection or nearby to get over to the roads to run. So we have other considerations besides the bus traffic. And you know, once you put a pathway there and once you put the crosswalk there, you are inviting people to use it in the neighborhood. We're gonna have this big draw, Whole Foods, and then ultimately other retail coming online. It's gonna be a lot more than the bus traffic.
It sounds like though if we know the distance of the footage, that if we say we want X, whatever X may be, I think if Bob, if I understood you correctly, and we say this is what needs to be done, then it's incumbent upon.
Please hang up and try your call again. If you need assistance, dial your operator.
It's incumbent upon
Please hang up now.
Summit Greenfield to meet that requirement, and if that can be done, and you could say, yes, it can be done, then whether we decide today what that is, it's not as important as knowing that it can be done within a certain period of time, whether it's concrete, whether it's metal, whatever it may be.
Right.
So, okay, so I'll take a shot at a criteria then, that maybe the town wants to see. I have a problem with a sidewalk which is right on the shoulder, on the edge of this, it's an arterial, I mean, it's the one way north and south in this community without jumping way over on one side of the ridge line or getting down to the sawmill. And it's not just within the community, it's traffic that goes from Mount Kisco all the way down to Pleasantville, for example, and beyond. And it seems to me that with that category of roadway taking that kind of traffic, we shouldn't accept a sidewalk which is right at the edge of the pavement. Secondly, I think that if we're gonna have a sidewalk and we're gonna have a place where people are standing and waiting to cross the street and getting on and off the bus, it seems to me like a 5-foot sidewalk is something which would be more appropriate. And if you could, I know you're not gonna be able to do this, but if you could get some kind of a little parkway in there between the sidewalk and a green strip or something.
But just to reframe the conversation though, Tom, we're only talking about the MPT plan, so we're only talking about until the permanent plan takes place.
June.
And my understanding is that in the meantime, Summit Greenfield is going to look into purchasing the property from Mr. Rose, who spoke at the.
So
Two
how long?
neighboring properties.
Right, and I think
Rose
that's.
and neighbor.
His neighbor.
Rose and neighbor.
and they,
And it was at our initiative that they're doing that, and that's great. But in the meantime who knows how long that's gonna take? I mean, that could go past the June or April date or whatever date is being represented as the full build date. So it's like 6 months
I agree with you, I just wanna
in the
make sure that we're
wintertime.
keeping in mind that it doesn't have to be the long-term solution with regard to the 5-foot
I
width
think we
of
might
the
wanna look
sidewalk
at the long-term solution when it comes to that. I think it would be good in the interim anyway, to find some way, it's just my opinion, to look at putting this in place.
So if I may, for point of reference, Tom, Lou isn't gonna find the 5 feet, we need to reflect the applicant, Lou is reviewing the applicant's.
I understand that. And yes, thank you. He just happens to be the one with the bow tie.
I know, I just wanted to make sure that was.
Guilty.
So have we reached a conclusion in terms of what the standards are that we want to see, given the constraints that we have?
No, but I think, you know, even tomorrow, we could provide the board two different options, one being a concrete barrier and one being some other type of device to separate the live traffic from the walkway between the bus stop and the crosswalk.
Do we
Okay.
conclude on the lane width? Are we still wrestling with making it 11 or 12, or is it staying at 13? I've heard three things we discussed: lane, barrier, and sidewalk, and we haven't landed on anything yet, from what I understand. So if we're gonna give these guys direction to go forward, we have to give them three numbers. I don't think we can sit here and talk about it for another 2 hours. We need to give them some information so they can design it.
Yeah, but I don't think we can give them hard numbers, because I think we can say we would like the sidewalk as wide as reasonable. And with we have a 3-foot barrier, or striped area, stay out of this. You have a bus, you have to worry about, the bus has to let people out. So you don't wanna have necessarily barriers everywhere, Jersey barriers, you gotta let the people out and get into the safe zone. And then go down and cross, so there's a whole bunch of things there, but I think we need as wide as possible on the sidewalk. We need a safety
But see,
barrier
that-
system of some kind.
Everybody's got different opinions on what's as wide as possible, so I'm just trying to,
that-
I'm just trying to,
that's-
wait a minute, I'm trying to stop the applicant from coming in tomorrow, giving us another drawing, and then we all going, oh, that's not good enough, and then they're coming back again the next day. Now, we could give them a little bit more direction, I'm not saying the exact dimension, but if we give them a little bit more direction, maybe we could cut off coming back and reviewing another plan.
Well, that's why we have an expert on traffic.
I kinda
That's
think
what-
wide as possible
That's gonna be
is
his
pretty good direction.
bailiwick to do.
But let me just for my edification, the hard dash line, the big black one, is that the
This
right
one?
of way? Of the edge of the state right of way?
This one that's here?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
that
is it the
looks,
fence line?
no, that looks like it's the property line.
You think that's a property line?
Yeah, this is the property line that comes across, this bold dash line is the property line.
so is the gray cross hatching the dust stone
I
path?
think it's a ditch.
But I thought that's
Yeah, I
where
think
the
that's an
driveway was going, was
existing
basically a
condition.
ditch.
Yeah, no, John, you guys know what this,
It's inside the property line, it doesn't really matter at this point to me, because we have to get to the point where the land is now transferred, and that's when we can get to the final thing, as long as we set criteria, like make it as wide as reasonable, not as wide as feasible, because, whoa, that could be too wide, and certainly not as wide as possible, alright, so what's reasonable is what we wanna shoot for, and recognizing that it will change by the time we get to the permanent, once we get the land.
But I just wanna understand though, is that stone dust walkway being shown in land that's not actually available to us?
no, it would be between this black line and where these red bollards are, it's basically in here, in this area right in here.
Than it looks on the drawing.
Well, I'd like to clarify that a little bit, Lou.
Yeah.
That area right now is paved, so it's not a stone dust on that side of the road. We
paved.
paved as
This is
wide as
paved.
we could,
Right.
up to the existing telephone poles and up to the edge of the right of way. So we are right now, we're at the widest we are, and as John had said earlier, that path is somewhere around 4 feet wide, and it does taper as you get closer to that choke point that goes just off that plan.
So
Right.
So it's a paved path as opposed
Does
to a
anybody
stone
have
dust?
a
Yes,
pointer?
right now it's a paved path. We paved as much as we could, as wide as we could on both sides of the MPT plan, because
don't.
we were anticipating trying to get everything the way that everybody had designed in terms
So
of.
what is the most narrow safety device outside of a concrete Jersey barrier that one could place?
Well, those
The four red dots, right? That's pretty narrow.
But they're not protected.
But then they're not protective, they're
are.
more of a
Oh, yeah.
delineator.
Marking, right,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
what would be the most protective?
I
in your
think
experience?
a jersey barrier, whether it be concrete or a liquid filled barrier would be
But that-
the most
Then
protective.
that takes at least 2 feet of the 4 feet, so that leaves you only 2 feet.
Yeah,
I don't know whether we need the most protective. We can argue this to a point where we're not gonna do anything. So what I think would be prudent to do would be to take what is available in terms of adjusting the lane width, the property line, the prudent shoulder, and do some drawings, a drawing using the barrier, which I think would do the job, which would be a narrow one, which are these steel poles with a guardrail on them without doing the whole big ones. And show that drawing to us, and then we'll decide what's reasonable and not reasonable as part of that process.
But Tom, with regard to the lane width, with all due respect, I mean, our expert consultant is telling us his recommendation is 13 feet.
Okay, so that's a recommendation, that's fine. Can we just do the drawing and then we can look at it? I mean, if you're not willing to do the lane width at 11 feet, then do one with 13 feet. And we'll take a look at it.
12 feet, or, okay.
Well, I think from a liability perspective, if you're a traffic engineer and your opinion is that it needs to be a certain width based upon that, I think we need, unless the planning board members can give you a reason why it shouldn't be that way, we've gotta go with all due respect, the judgment of the expert, with respect to the lane width.
So,
No, he said he could give you 12 feet.
Right, I don't hear that
You
he-
have to see it, I'm not hearing him say that's his recommendation.
If we look at this area based on what's actually been paved, and we can put in something that's more protective than these delineators, and that requires this to be 12 feet, then I'm okay with 12 feet, but I would not recommend anything less than 12 feet.
If your delineator zone, or not yours, but if that delineator zone is 3 feet, and we know that Jersey barriers flare out to 2, we could fit Jersey barriers in that zone, right?
Yes.
And they're 2, so we pick up a foot, and that foot could go to the sidewalk, which we heard is 4 feet now. So now the sidewalk's 5 feet with a 2-foot Jersey barrier, and the lane width can stay at 13.
Exactly, and if we can do that and have a safer walkway and area there and maintaining the 13 feet, that's what I would prefer.
Say that again, though, I just got confused there. How are you putting that footage?
So if the striping here is 3 feet and the concrete barrier really occupies 2 feet, then we really don't need to change the lane width and we could still fit this in, the concrete barrier or water-filled barrier, and have the walkway on the side, and it still would be 4 feet. I think it ranges anywhere from 3 to 4 feet because it flares out, right? It's tighter here and then it widens out over here by the crosswalk.
I think Greg summarized it very well there, and I think we should try to move on.
well, can I, with one point of information, because I'm looking at the final plan, which has been, I think, approved as the final plan. It shows 11 feet for the northbound through lane. And before the intersection, and 11 feet, I mean, it's really small, and 11 feet in the receiving lane.
And
So
that,
are we in,
and that northbound is, and they also have a left turn bay.
yeah,
Right.
Which is,
well, how does that affect the left? It's just gonna take,
Because there's not enough room, you can go down to 11 feet if you have that left turn bay.
but you said you needed 13 feet on the receiving end of this thing, which has nothing to do with the left turn lane. The receiving end from Roaring Brook Road, you needed 13, this drawing shows 11. So maybe we ought to look at this,
And that's the final condition, right?
and what's different from the left turn from the final condition and the interim condition?
So the
Left turn
rece-
off of Roaring Brook Road.
The receiving lane coming in the northbound direction for this MPT plan, I'd like to see a wider lane, receiving lane.
But there's in the final plan, there's striping between the receiving lane that goes northbound and the southbound lane.
So we're assuming that traffic's gonna go over, okay? There is, you're right. Alright, okay, fine.
So, I guess the only issue that I guess to a certain extent that needs to be addressed is the safety of the bus stopping. is, right? That's in addition, that has to be factored in, correct?
The bus stopping in the northbound direction
Yeah.
where it is today.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're keeping the bus stop in the existing location. That's right.
Okay.
What's next?
I think item, condition number 7.
Did we skip 6? No, just.
You don't wanna do it again.
6 we were on, yeah.
7 is
Let's do
painted
6,
east-west crosswalk on the north side of the intersection, that's on the plan. Number 8 is the temporary pedestrian signal heads, including push button. We basically talked about that, and as we heard, that's something that is going to be provided sooner rather than later. And the applicant will be in contact with New York State DOT with respect to the pedestrian signal heads that are temporary. Condition 9 is temporary lighting at the bus stop along the walkway and including the crosswalk itself. They're shown on red in 3 different locations, one near the bus stop, the other on one side of the crosswalk, and the other side of the crosswalk. And I actually think there's another light that is near the other relocated bus stop, near the site entrance.
I had a question about the lighting. There's a note on the plan, note number 5, that says temporary lighting may be provided during hours of darkness, and then in parentheses, 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. Shouldn't we be lighting this? I'm sorry for the neighbors, but shouldn't it just be lit throughout this temporary traffic management period?
That's a good question. I don't know the lighting levels, if there's any lighting out there now. And so,
There's no lighting.
if there's no lighting from,
My view is if the stores are closed, we don't need that lighting. That's what
Well,
I
that's
think.
certainly longer than these hours at any rate.
And
It's
But,
9 p.m.
the purpose of the lighting really was from a pedestrian standpoint, so that would be lit when pedestrians, we thought the pedestrians were going to be in the crosswalk.
Right.
Do we know what the hours of the store are at this point, what they're proposed to be?
I do not know that.
Well, let me do this.
8 to 10 p.m. I'm checking the time.
Great, thank you.
One second, but it's actually 8 to 10.
I have a,
There's some
let me ask,
nightlife we're gonna have here in Newcastle.
let me ask this. I have a question. I'll talk to you about it.
But we also
The-
need
the
to then
question to
be
this
lighting that for the folks who may be waiting at the bus stop to take the bus home after the store.
The last buses, what time?
The last bus was 6:04 or 6:06.
So I have another question, and that was,
Well, but is this still on the line? Because I think there's a question raised about the hours, and we should close that issue down before we move on to
so
the
it was
next
8 to
one.
10 was what.
So the lighting should be till 10 p.m., even though the last bus is at 7 o'clock.
I'm just confirming.
Okay, not necessarily, I mean, I think Sheila raised a very important question, and I think the other issue is, I still haven't heard from anyone, I've asked this several times, what are the off-hours traffic signal situation? Is this thing gonna be on a blinker? Is it gonna be back to the regular signal system? I haven't heard on this, and I think that's relevant in terms of what we're going to do in terms of police.
This signal at it's going to operate all the time.
As what? It's current blinking. So what's it gonna operate
No.
as?
No, that's not
Blinking
blinking.
now.
The one at the high school is blinking.
No, the one on 117 is blinking.
And what time did you drive by?
This morning at 9 o'clock, and last night at 7 o'clock.
Okay,
Well, I
so,
just drove
blinking.
through and it was not
It
blinking.
was not
Yes.
blinking, okay.
yes, I can confirm her
So what we
observation.
need to know is what those hours are when it's going to be blinking and when it's gonna be manned, because I think it's relevant in terms of the opening hours of this.
Well, and in my
And also
experience,
what when we are going to be scheduling police.
it's been blinking when they've had flaggers there,
Mm-hmm.
because otherwise people are stopping and they don't know if they should go and the flaggers
That's
are waiting.
right.
But that when the construction has been done, it's then been going back to a regular
And they
light.
finished paving today, tomorrow they're doing striping, is that right?
Yep.
So
And then
but
they'll be done with the
when the
construction.
police are there, I presume that it will be blinking when they're monitoring it?
That'd be great.
No,
So we can ask
this,
the lieutenant, who's,
That's what I'm asking.
No, it will not be blinking, it'll be regular operation,
And you will the police will be supplementing that somehow?
taking over it if need be, yes.
Okay.
And if it's so bad, we can actually turn it back to blinking if we felt it was necessary.
Okay.
Our intention is to have it keeping it,
What's gonna be the speed limit through the intersection and on that stretch of the road during this period? Is it gonna be maintained at 35 miles an hour?
I had a recommendation to make it 25.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can change that in the construction zone with construction signing, which we don't have on the plan yet, but we certainly can, or the applicant can add that onto the
Well,
plan.
even thinking about our police officers standing out there
Mm-hmm.
directing traffic at 35 miles an hour, I think that's a little bit terrifying just on that score alone.
Realistically though, I
Instead of
think you're
light.
gonna have a lot of cars there, I think the odds of anyone going 35 are pretty small to begin with, except like at night when the traffic is, when it's.
I think that's accurate, I can't imagine.
I don't think so, rush hour, no way.
And maybe the lieutenant can offer his experience and
if it's
opinions on
flowing
that.
that low, we won't need to be in the intersection.
Oh, good point.
Well, what's the downside of having us lowering it to 35?
Dan, everyone wants to.
Why not wait and see?
Occasionally logic.
We need to do so.
You know, it's so much more fun.
Yeah, that's always something you can change down the road.
We can change it later, not
So-
back to why you do it now.
Just go back to the lighting for a section. I think all of these spots that they have picked to put lights make a lot of sense. But are we talking those hideous sort of, I'm gonna call like miniature ball field lights? Or are we talking about something that's of a slightly more kind of,
Like a street lamp.
yeah, like a street lamp?
In other words, not as so intrusive on the neighbors.
Right, so what's not intrusive on the neighbors but still sheds light, I mean, I kind of feel that there has to be a certain amount of height with down beams rather than something that's just as you're driving and you're like, oh my god, what is that?
It doesn't have to be a construction light.
Right, it doesn't have to be, right, and I'm just wondering if we need to specify that because, you know,
I think that's a great idea, why don't we do that? Put a traffic light, now put a normal kind of street light on each side of the crosswalk, and that takes care of everything, goes on at dark, comes off at dawn.
I think we should ask the applicant what they propose, and if that's part of this package, if there's a detail of that.
I'm not familiar with a light that looks like a street light, you know,
That's
for a
temporary.
construction, you know, for a construction use. Right now, it would be those standard lights that you see out there that are, you know, that are on a trailer with a generator and they look like miniature ball field lights.
And I think those are fine for the MPT,
Yeah.
Or MTP. But permanently, then I think we.
Permanently, we're not installing new lights, new street lights out there. There are street lights out there currently. but-
There are, okay.
I believe that that's one of the things that we requested in the letter on Friday, actually, was whether we could contemplate having the lighting here by the crosswalk be made permanent.
But if the lighting is already at the intersection of Roaring Brook and 117, then it's only a light on the other side.
but I also think I think it's important that what you don't have is you have the light high enough. So a street lamp might be what, 18 feet tall? I have no clue.
Yeah, they-
But, you know, it varies, it's 18 feet tall, kind of casting down light, spreading it out, versus some of the construction or temporary construction lighting, it's sort of like eye level. And I think when it's eye level at this particular intersection, and if it's dusk, and if it's a busy time, and people, or it's bad weather, people will actually have their visibility kind of affected because it's.
Understood, some of these, and I have to check with the ones that, we have the ones that, how high can they go? Cause they are adjustable in terms of height.
Right, so I just did a quick Google search, it's not like they're crazy expensive.
You could turn them.
Yeah, we can turn them, we can.
The ones on the
So
Brunswick
could you
Parkway?
provide a
Yeah.
detail? Could you provide a detail as part of this to include the type of street lighting with the goal to have it be a down?
Temporary street lighting or permanent street lighting? I just want to
Both.
understand.
Well, ultimately permanent.
But I even just for the temporary, because as I said, you don't want it to be, 11 feet tall and you're driving down the road, and is that a truck or is that?
Well, if it's a construction zone and these are construction lights, we want to, again, to go back to liability, you want to be, you
No,
want
I
construction
understand,
lights
but there's
in
different types of
construction
lighting and a
zones.
construction light can be blinding,
I know,
quite
but
frankly.
I don't think necessarily like a nice pole, maybe that's a good permanent solution, but for a construction zone, it's.
But there, I just did a quick Google search on temporary construction, temporary street lamps, they appear to exist.
He said you can adjust it,
So I'm sorry, forgive my ignorance, is there a street light in this intersection in the final
Yes.
plan?
On the final plan?
Right now.
Currently there
Right
is.
now, yeah.
So where is the street lamp that's currently there?
Is it a Cobra head? Is it just an old Cobra head, John?
It looks good.
The one that's out there?
They can
Is it like just one of the old Cobra heads?
Looking at the
Okay.
temporary.
It's located
In the worst spot.
approximately in this vicinity right here.
There's a street light there,
Street light there, yeah.
permanent.
Yes, yeah.
So that's this one.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
There's no, well, there's actually a utility pole. That's one utility pole right here that you see. And then there's another pole that has a light on it.
Great.
There's two, yeah.
That's not gonna illuminate the crosswalk.
And just one more question, I mean,
It
consider
does
we
shut
have
down.
God's,
Yeah.
you know, God's gift of telephone poles.
What's that?
I just-
They have extra telephone poles on the
We
side?
have
of
extra,
that?
a few extra telephone poles on the
Actually, right
side.
here, you've got two side by side.
But I'm just wondering, even on the other side of the road at the crosswalk, I'm pretty sure there's some telephone poles over there.
Over here?
Mm.
Well.
Can they be
there's
mounted
gonna-
on the telephone
Right here,
poles?
you can see where the permanent ones are, okay? And then right now, like Lou was mentioning, in this corner here, we have the existing one that we're waiting for the telecommunications to be removed so we can get rid of that. There was originally one here, as you can see, that one is gone. So that's really the last one that's impeding upon the intersection that we're waiting to get, you know, those lines off of.
But that won't happen till April, right?
No, we're hoping, I'm hoping. I would love to, I keep trying to guess with these utilities, but I would like to, hopefully by the end of January, we could have those all removed. And in regards to temp lighting, like what we typically use on a site right now is what they were just talking about, those light towers. And they go up 16 to 20 feet.
Okay.
And you can see the amount of light they show
Right.
down.
Well, maybe they can even slightly adjust.
And those heads, they can rotate
Yeah.
180 degrees this way or right to left.
But I
also.
think we should have that kind of detail and have it take
Yeah,
a look
see,
at it,
what
because I
our-
really.
Our intentions are, behind the Jersey barrier, if I could set that up right here, that would light this whole intersection, one light. And
No,
it's-
I understand, but I don't think that the neighbors are gonna wanna have a ball field on the road.
Right, and
And
the
and
pleasure
I
we
think
have.
that what you need to do is it needs to be, it needs to enhance the visibility,
Mhm.
not kind of.
Right, and if we got all the full lights and say we direct them, and they say, that's way too bright, you can actually shut off the lights individually, so you can go anywhere from 1 to 4.
The applicant be willing to work with us to figure out the best lighting.
Absolutely, and
Well, I
I would
think it should
suggest
be
that we
part of the
put
plan.
up what we have, turn on either one, 2, or 3 bulbs in each light to see what's acceptable and to make sure that it's not blinding coming into traffic.
Right.
I think it's something that we could easily do with Lieutenant Carroll or whoever else, and once we have them set up and we can go out there and see.
They've been very responsive to the residents on Roaringbrook Road. There's no reason why they wouldn't be responsive when it comes to light issues on 117 as well.
So I'm back to my thought of a moment ago, which is that I believe that the letter that we sent over Saturday from Lou requested looking into making permanent the lighting improvements here at this crosswalk. So while I think we may be able to live with those ball field lights on a temporary basis,
Phase 3
I
needs
think
to-
as a part of the permanent plan, I think we'd like to see permanent traffic lights, permanent lights around the crosswalk here.
Especially if there's gonna be a stone dust sidewalk there. But we could look into that and make it part of the pathway there, stage 3
And
with the
then-
pathway.
Yep. And then to sort of close the loop on this issue, there was the discussion about the hours.
Response, yes, that's going to happen, or no, it's not going to happen?
No, I believe that it will be revised to reflect that at phase 3, to the extent not already on the site plan approval, will be permanent lighting.
One question was what was approved in the site plan, we'll have to go back and take a look at that, the permit approval.
And as far as the hours, we get, note 5 should be revised to reflect from 4 PM until closing of the store, or half hour after the closing of the store, whatever that might be, until we find out what those hours are.
So Nick, I'm guessing, I'm wondering why we're waiting for phase 3 to put these improvements in, could they not be put in now? The lighting?
Well, we can't put them in right away because the pole is still there. There's a key pole in the way. The temporary lighting can go right.
Which key pole is in the way of putting the lighting
We were talking about like nice decorative lights, it just wouldn't make sense to maybe do it along the stone dust sidewalk. That would also
Certainly
provide
stone dust
light.
sidewalk is gonna be part of the permanent plan.
Right, stage, that's gonna be part of stage 3.
I guess I'm just wondering why we just, what's holding us up from doing it now?
I don't think anything is holding us up from doing that, but I think that it's one of the things that they'll be working towards in order to check the box and move into phase 3, right? So if it's something that can be completed
But
sooner rather than later, I think we should ask them
there's
to
no
do
evidence
that.
that they will aggressively try and do it sooner. Unless, if we say June, who knows, or July, or whenever, or April, whenever phase
seems-
3 begins, we're
seems
not
to-
holding them to anything. We're only holding them to the original approval.
It seems to me reasonable that in phase 1, they're gonna have the temporary lights, but before we go to phase 2, they should certainly have a plan with respect to this additional comment on the permanent lighting, and then a schedule as to when that would be
If the
implemented.
temporary lights are in, then that's fine. I just don't know why we don't ask them to do the permanent lights. That's all.
The only thing I would add to that is we don't want any construction going on at the intersection during this NPT plan, right? That's part of this as well.
But you're gonna be removing that pole.
Right.
Right, on the other side of the barrier.
I think part of it is we'd like the
That's all I'm
permanent lights
saying.
to be like a potentially a beautiful decorative light as opposed to, you know, the thing that can slap up the fastest, right?
Well, I'm not saying that. I don't understand why these two things are mutually exclusive. Why can't they put up the pole we want, however much time it takes them to start now and get it done?
Because
I'm not saying just put up
I guess it
something else.
depends on when the start date is.
It's also an active
Well, we make
construction
it.
zone.
Well, let's ask the question, why can't
So
you?
can you,
It's an
But I
active
think we
construction
can
zone,
live
so
with
the best time to put up that decorative lighting is really at
When
the
it-
end,
when it's done.
when it's all done,
So it
because,
doesn't get done
you know,
up.
the chances of it being hit by a backhoe, a paver, whatever, I think goes up exponentially during this type of work.
Which happens to be consistent with our downtown streetscape, the lights are going up at the end.
And the temporary lighting is gonna be in place until the permanent lighting is installed, so there's never a gap.
Fine.
but so, Lou, we're at comment 10?
We are on comment 10, and that is, do not block the
So let's
intersection.
just wrapping up on this, and part of this, for the final phase there, they're gonna come back to us with a lighting addition as part of the permanent plan, is that correct?
That's phase 2, they come up with a lighting plan.
But going back to Sheila's original question on this, Nick, am I correct in
Note 5 would be revised to reflect that the hours of lighting should be from 4 PM until store closing, or half an hour after store closing?
half after closing?
Okay.
Okay,
Until
thank
half
you,
hour
that
after
was
store
it,
closing.
that's what I was after here.
10:30.
I think that makes good sense.
That'd be our first.
Okay, comment 10, because we're picking up a theme.
So comment 10 talks about the do not block the intersection, striping on the ground with additional signing. And also that there's going to be a variable message sign also that would display that similar message. But the static signs, there would be two, one on either side of the roadway on 117. And there also would be lane utilization markings on the ground of the site access coming out. So you'd have a right turn lane and a left turn lane that do not block the intersection markings on the ground. And again, at some point, we're gonna talk about variable message signing coming southbound on 117. That would most likely display a message, you know, Whole Foods turn right at the site access, do not block the intersection, and there's probably a third message that we would
I
have
just
there.
wanted to confirm that number 10 here, there were 2 spots where there's the don't block the box. It's the site access off of 117 where you have that big square now, but then it also says on Annandale in 117, which is slightly further down, I didn't see it on the drawing.
Right.
So I just wanna confirm that it's in both spots, which is what it says in the condition, but it's just not on the drawing.
So the applicant would have to add similar signing and striping to the intersection of 117 and Annandale. And that would require 2 more signs and striping on the ground. And
We're
I think
striping
that,
on the ground for Cowden on further up on the drawing. And
Yep.
Right,
and that's
so
gonna be
it's the
included as
same
well.
thing,
so it would be a similar type box, but at the intersection of Annandale.
right.
I think that's something that they heard and
Yeah, it
most
just
likely
wasn't
be able
on
to
there,
provide.
but it's written.
Yeah, it's been conveyed.
And there's no exemption, sorry, just one quick question. I know we have to get DOT approval because it's a, but there's no, I know sometimes they say during construction, there are kind of overrides that the town can do in a construction zone, that can't be done.
I think we're a little bit outside of the construction zone here, but we could probably, ask that question to DOT. I don't think there's going to be opposition to doing the striping and signing. I think that's something that they would be okay with. Okay, that was the easiest comment that we've had so far.
Stop talking in.
We're on a roll.
On to the next one.
Provide a message into the variable message board on 117 directing southbound traffic for Whole Foods, the site in general, to enter the site at this location coming southbound. So we would have a variable message sign. I don't see that on here, on the board, on the plan.
It's on the area.
Thank you.
Yeah, VMS.
Okay, so the VMS sign is up here, and so that for southbound traffic would direct them to go into the site access driveway, and then they wouldn't have to come down to Roaring Brook Road.
Really, I think that where it's pointing to is kind of an odd location. How many feet ahead of?
Well,
Wait a minute, what?
you want to give them advance notice that the next right turn is going to be into the site.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in a fine spot.
Yep, okay.
Okay. No construction, 12, no construction by the applicant shall occur at the intersection and approaches to the intersection of 117 and Roaring Brook Road during this phase unless directed by the town. They agreed to that condition. Installation of additional variable message signs with radar speed capabilities to be located north and south of the intersection of 117 in consultation with the police department and consultation with the traffic engineer. And so this was really to have additional, speed control signs on 117 for people traveling in each direction.
How far, I'm sorry, how far north, how far south?
We didn't really specify that. We're going to try to place that in the field. We're probably looking at least a quarter mile in each direction of the intersection. But we could place that with the lieutenant as far as the location of those signs go. And this is more of not during peak times when there's congestion, but during those non-peak times where you might have traffic that might be traveling at a high rate of speed, higher than what we want.
Could I ask the lieutenant his thoughts about speed limit of 25, a quarter mile either way of the construction site, whether he thought that would be something?
Slower, safer, sure. I wouldn't check it all.
Okay.
And
Is
before
that
you leave
something
that,
we would wanna see?
Well, I guess we have to, because we were just told it's safer.
Well, it's safer, I think we should. I mean, Dick has been talking about this for 2 weeks, and we just wanna make sure we.
So with respect to that,
get it there.
in advance of the construction zone, right, they would post guide signs, orange signs for the reduction in speed to 25.
Wouldn't that be on the variable message sign, construction zone, not slow work ahead, like slow work, but
We
wouldn't
can,
it be, speed limit reduced to 25 miles per hour? I mean, wouldn't it kind of be more logical?
we could
And
do
you could
it,
have the tripwire that says, danger, too fast, and then, warning, too fast, and then thank you if they go the right speed.
that's a lot of messages.
I drive that all the time
I know.
on the road, it's like, there's a lot of things, what I'm saying is you have a big sign. Wait, wait a minute, guys, I think it was misconstrued, there is the big sign that lets you know that you're coming into a construction zone and that the speed limit has been reduced to 25 miles
Right.
per hour, alright, so everybody put on warning. If at a certain amount of distance after that, we have one of those things with that you drive over in the road that measures your speed,
Well, these would have radar capability, so we wouldn't need that on the ground.
or radar
So-
capabilities, and then it would tell you whether you were above
Yes,
or below.
that's what these are. These would be that.
Right, so I think that the reduced speed limit should be part of the variable message sign during the MTP plan, because I think that's the sign that people notice, it's by far and away the largest sign we have.
I think we could add another message, I just wouldn't want to have more than 3 or 4
But you're
messages.
not, are we limited to the character size that's on that sign?
Yeah.
You cannot adjust the character size?
Well, you can adjust the message, yes, and how many words, and how many, how many messages you post, you have a limitation,
I
some
have
limitation.
a brief facetious suggestion. Why don't we, have something overhead that looks like a New York City police camera for speeding? It just has to be empty, you don't have to do anything, just have it empty there, that might be just as good as a variable message sign.
You're gonna have officers there. That's
No, we're
more
talking
of
about
a deterrent than a fake camera.
Yeah, I agree,
We're talking about
temporary
going
doesn't
into
allow.
the construction zone.
Alright,
Okay, so we're on 14.
Detailed drawing must be included that adequately addresses the town's concerns with regards to misalignment between the northbound and southbound. I think this plan satisfies that, there's no alignment issue. Prior to the building inspector's issuance of the TCO, the applicant shall test the proper operation of the requirements as listed above to the satisfaction of the police department, and they agreed to that. Anything else in phase 1?
Can I make a comment about the Roaring Brook Road intersection?
Yes,
Okay, I don't know if you have a picture of that.
I don't, but
Okay, well,
I could get one.
hopefully everybody's familiar with it, but I go through that intersection many times through the course of every week. And when I went through it yesterday, which was the first time that the lights were activated and well, at least the first time I went through it, when everything was open and the lane directionals were there and everything, in the eastbound direction, I found it very confusing, and I know this intersection very well. So what I found confusing about it is the lines don't extend back far enough to cue you up in the direction that you need to go in. So I had to slow down and think, just a moment, I'm going straight through, I'm lining my car with the middle. The sign so you've got your light poles, you've got two lights and 2 signage, the white hanging signs that are directly in your line of vision. But the left-hand turn sign is way over to the left on a different pole, and so your eyes don't pick it up right away. At least that's what I found. I went through it again this morning hoping to understand the intersection a little bit better, but unfortunately I was behind an 18-wheeler who had come off the Sawmill Parkway at exit 33 and worked its way up Roaring Brook Road, and we were moving so slowly that I didn't have a problem figuring out which way I was supposed to be at the intersection. But is there a way to maybe
So you're talking about traveling in the eastbound direction?
Yes, I don't find it a problem in the westbound direction, but I found it, at least the first time through, I found it confusing, and I'm familiar with it, so when we bring in all these new drivers who are unfamiliar with the area, I'm wondering if it's not going to register right away that there's a left-hand turn lane and you can move over. And I know the road is just fanning out at that point,
Right.
but can we extend the road, the white striping on the road, maybe put in a second left-hand turn arrow, a second right-hand turn arrow,
Farther west.
farther west, sooner on the road as you're approaching the intersection.
School traffic, that's going to be confusing. The reason it's open right now is for the school, because you've got a lot of people entering and exiting at that spot to Horace Greeley High School. There's an enormous amount of turn traffic there. If you put those things there, you're gonna get yourself in trouble.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I worry about those kids more than anybody else.
We will look at that.
Take a look at it, thank you.
We can take a look at that.
Lou, what will the signage be for directing northbound Route 117 traffic to Whole Foods at this point? Will there be signs directing people to make a left-hand turn down Roaring Brook to go through the main entrance on Roaring Brook Road? Or will we be directing folks to be banking through the intersections straight to make the left-hand turn into the 117 entrance? Which do you prefer?
My suggestion is to have northbound left turns at Roaring Brook Road because it's a signalized controlled intersection versus having them make this unsignalized left-hand turn, which I prefer the signal.
So will we have signage directing people then to make the left-hand turn for Whole Foods at the intersection?
That's the other VMS sign that I don't think we have that one placed, right?
I think they'll find their way to Whole Foods.
Well, we don't want them to find the other way, that's the problem.
I actually think we want them to split. I think we wanna have half go one way, half go the other, just for traffic flow purposes.
As long as it doesn't queue
Everybody
up.
thinks they have to go left, we're gonna have a problem, because that,
It could, that's why I asked the
Right,
question.
to the back.
We don't have a turn lane.
Yeah, I don't know what the answer is, that's why I raised it. I don't know what Lou's recommendation is, and he's told us, but
Yeah, I would still prefer all of the left turns to happen at the signalized intersection. I do recognize that some people won't, because they'll know that they can get in through here. And it becomes a function of the path of least resistance, right? If this left turn going to the site becomes a problem and people are queuing up, then next time they come, they'll probably take advantage of the signal.
So, but Lou, are you talking final condition, phase 3, or are you talking about in the interim as well? Because there is no left turn in the interim. There's no left turn signal. People who want to make that left turn are essentially holding up the through traffic behind them.
Who are you talking about?
there's
Right.
still the
The
left turn
northbound
signal as
left
there
turn.
is today.
The left turn signal today is like 4 seconds. I mean, it's like nothing, and it's just to clear the people who are waiting there. It really doesn't do anything for the queue behind them. So in the interim, it seems to be that anybody who's coming northbound wanting to go to Whole Foods will either want to make the left turn and hold up traffic behind them at Boardbrook Road, or they'll move up and make the left-hand turn into the entrance to the site.
So part of this, and looking at the signal timing during the MPT, is that the northbound approach should have 20 to 25 seconds of green time to allow for all of the left turns and the through movement to continue unimpeded by southbound or southbound right turns. So everyone that's coming in the northbound direction would be able to make the left turn or continue through for a significant piece. This is about, I think it's a 110-second cycle, right? The whole cycle of the signal is almost 2 minutes. So that would be my recommendation as to, we don't have an exclusive left turn lane, but the entire northbound approach would be able to go.
Now, is that in the models, most current models that we have in front of us?
Yes, that is.
The lengthening of the
And
time
we can have
from
a
like
police officer
5
there.
seconds to 25 seconds
Yeah,
or whatever.
the analyses that we ran modify signal timing from the existing to the interim to the final condition based on what the traffic demands are at the intersection.
So it has a southbound hold for a 110-second left?
No, the southbound will hold for 20-25 seconds while the northbound is going, and then northbound and southbound would go concurrently, unless the pedestrian buttons are pushed.
And do we have the ability to change the signal timing based either on time of day or traffic volumes or?
So we can change them based on time of day, and that's something that we would have to talk to Mazer and the contractor on who's going into the traffic controller to make those changes, because it's a state signal, but I'm sure we should have access to that and be able to
Don't you think it
change
would
that.
sort of make sense that when, you know, half an hour before the store's open and half an hour afterwards, that the left-hand turn, unless it's the school traffic, right? So we need to factor that in, but wouldn't it make sense that you wouldn't make people when there's no traffic sit at a traffic light for 25 seconds?
We would probably have different timing plans for at least the 3 or 4 different peaks that you have. So there might be 3 different timing plans and then one that happens when one of those 3 are not in effect. So yes, for time periods where we don't anticipate a lot of left turns, it might be down to 10 seconds versus 20-25 seconds.
And at what point in this process, because I think, congestion is, or just basically, just the inconvenience of a really kind of awkward intersection. At what point of the MPT plan will that sort of be discussed and addressed?
I think as soon as the MPT is put in place and they test it, even without Whole Foods being open, I think is a good time to test it to see what those times should be just based on regular traffic conditions. And then our anticipation is if indeed Whole Foods does open, we would like to sample one day a week and maybe even a Saturday of what the traffic volumes are, so that we could adjust those traffic timings. Police will be out there also to observe, hey, this really needs to change, and that we can make those adjustments really on a week-by-week basis.
Lou, I have a question. I'm on the other side of town, so the conditions at this intersection we're talking about are something that are really foreign to me, except I go there maybe once a week, just passing through. I didn't send my children to this school. So this morning I drove over for the AM peak school hour, and the intersection was flowing fine. I got the impression that the traffic's coming up Roaring Brook instead. Sure enough, I drove down Roaring Brook and there it was all backed up. But the PM peak, I was there at 3 o'clock, and the line of traffic northbound went waiting to get through the light, went all the way back to Upland. It took 6 minutes for me to get through that light.
They were doing construction today.
No, there was nothing going on. The light was functioning.
Just typical
The light,
traffic.
Bob, the light was functioning.
And stopping traffic
The light was functioning.
at 1:30.
Pardon?
At 1:30, they were stopping traffic on Roaring Brook.
Right at 3 o'clock.
I was
Different
at 3
time,
o'clock.
3 o'clock.
Right.
Nobody was working, the light was functioning, as I think, maybe not on the light cycles you're talking about. But I guess what I'm suggesting is that, you know about the peak, right? And I don't know whether in your models you really have addressed the peak condition to figure out what the levels of service are during that period. If it's just averaged out for the whole hour, I can understand why it looks like traffic is flowing better. But we go to these meetings and folks show up and they say, I don't care what your models say, this road is a nightmare for us, it's backed up, it's a problem.
Well, we're going to talk about level service and delay in the second part of this, so maybe that's a good time to talk about.
Okay, fair enough, I brought it up because we were talking about it.
Yep.
Do you want to talk about the police presence and where the police presence will be at this point or later on?
Well, the police presence right now we have at the intersection of Roaring Brook and 117, and at the intersection of the signalized intersection of the site access, the school, and Roaring Brook. Those are the two locations that we had. Correct me if I'm wrong, Lieutenant, I think that's what's on the plan from 7 AM to 7 PM. And it was also based on the police, their discretion and observation as to if they needed to be out there longer or if we changed that during the course of operation.
What about the intersection at the western end of the Rim Road down toward the rail tracks? I think we're gonna see a fair amount of diversion of traffic going through the site and perhaps trying to
Before you
down-
get to the railroad tracks?
Yes, just before, where we have that pinch point where we have Roaring Brook and this, the Rim Road coming together, Ring Road coming together. So I would like to see police there to make sure that that is monitored, because that could be a very, very dangerous situation if people get caught in some sort of situation because of very, very heavy traffic. We spend an awful lot of time and money on the signal and the rail crossing, et cetera. But it seems to me it's a potential for another pinch point, and one that we ought to, just be very, very safe with.
And I think that falls under the police's observation as to if that's an issue, then they should have the ability to place another officer there.
I would suggest it shouldn't be if it's an issue. I'd suggest that we need to make that.
And certainly you could start with
I
it,
agree,
yes.
I think it needs to start with it, 100%, people try to sneak out that back entrance.
Just not sneak
Well, not only
I mean,
sneak out,
literally
we
sneak out,
want
we try
people
to-
to go
They
in
go on my
that
side
way,
of town,
coming
that's how we
from
go.
anyone coming from the sawmill or the other side of town, we
Instead
don't
of
want
closing
them
back.
driving all the way up, we want them coming in that way.
So
And I think we should also
And
add
going
to
out.
that the site entrance.
this side entrance that's here. You can certainly add that. I think that it's really in close proximity. It almost
I don't
kind of
think, I
be in
don't
the
think
same.
having a policeman at the site entrance
Well, we
sort
may
of
need it
conducting
because of
traffic,
left-hand turns.
at the one off of
People
one
start going
seventeen,
there.
I agree with you, the one
Yes.
coming up the hill because even today when I was driving, they had blocked off a Whole Foods access because they didn't want people to think it was open.
I'd rather have our officers there and then tell us that they're not needed
Right.
than to not have them there. I'd rather be more inclusive in terms of our requirements.
Start with it and then remove
Just
it.
pull it back. We just hear from the
Lieutenant?
I don't think we can provide 4 officers in addition for 12 hours. This on this plan, it's too taxing on the department. I don't think we'll be able to fill it, unfortunately. I do think we have the ability to move the officer from Roaring Brook outside of peak times to help out the other areas if need be. So, I mean, outside the high school was 7, 8 for sure. Their concern was during lunch hours, but we were told that they're not letting any students leave by vehicle between, for lunch hours.
Seniors can leave.
Seniors can.
Just seniors.
Just seniors,
Just seniors can leave by vehicle? Okay, now they're still going out the back end, but they're not coming across Roaring Brook Road, so that was concern time. And then, the other time is dismissal, and then maybe it's for after school. So in between that time, we do have flexibility to take an officer from there and move it up to 117 and the entrance to Whole Foods.
You have the most you can dedicate it
Or
to
down,
two
or
at a
down.
time.
I think it's a good idea initially to have somebody down, put the box in the box by the,
The most you can dedicate is 2 officers at a time?
I think we initially, we could probably stretch it to 3, but I can't.
Can we do rent a traffic cop?
You get what you pay for. We've also, the MTA is planning on coming up and helping us, so.
Okay.
Because they're concerned with the opening as well, so we had discussions with them.
Down by the railroad track?
Yes.
And the
They
back,
can cover that entrance maybe
yeah,
over
right by
there.
the back entrance, right?
Yeah.
But you're right, you're not gonna need the school at all times, I mean.
Would they have jurisdiction over that entrance in the back? Or is it
No,
too
but
far?
it was blocking the box though, I think the concern was blocking the railroad tracks and people getting stuck in that area. So, and they have authority over that.
Right, I understand that, but what about the entrance in the back by the railroad track? Was that not anything they could help out with?
No.
Can we get would it be possible if we needed to have a flagger from the applicant?
That makes sense,
Yeah.
we need it.
Yeah.
We will rely on the police officer to say there's a need,
Yeah, I think we'd
and
start
then we
with
can
3
see
and then,
through the flagger
see how long we can go.
until it gets sorted, then maybe that'll change the striping back there or something else, another
So I'm
hash
sorry,
map, another hash.
3 officers, 7 AM to 7 PM?
At least the first couple days, for sure.
First couple days?
For a point of clarity, Lieutenant,
I don't know, no offense, but couple days, I mean, it's gonna be a couple days is not gonna cover the opening of Whole Foods.
I'd rather have it at least a month.
I was almost gonna say exactly the same thing, because what's gonna end up happening, and even I look at some of these traffic numbers, I mean, I was just at Chico's, which is a fraction of the size, I mean, a couple of days just to sort of, I get that you wanna observe it, but I really think that a Saturday, some of these peak times, like maybe it's 3 officers at critical moments and then 2, but I just think that the confusion that ends up happening when you're drawing people not from our own backyard, but from a regional perspective who don't make this their home and drive the roads every day, I think this is gonna be a completely different scenario, and I would way prefer to be more conservative. Because we've been talking about, police presence, but police presence a couple of days doesn't exactly.
Well, the way we discussed it was that it would be the police from 7 to 7 until December 31st, and during those times and both afterwards, the
I
police would
don't
then.
ever remember discussing that, not once,
Right, because
ever.
that's in the conditions that were approved and it was in our prior correspondence, but what we had discussed was that the police would
I
have
don't
the.
believe that has been that in the prior conversation, this is the first time hearing of it.
The notes in the plans, it was in the first sentence.
It's in the notes in the plans?
Correct, it was what we had discussed.
We can't remember everything.
That's it.
Gets it, it's in the notes.
The plan has been thought to be there as long as we felt it would be necessary for our determination. That's the plan. We've been talking 2 officers and now we just have discussion of the 3rd, which I think is fine initially. We can see how long we can sustain it, or how long it's necessary.
I understand it's a tremendous burden on our police department, it takes the resources from other areas of town and other work that you need to have. Not that you're not gonna do it, but other types of.
This will be in addition to our normal staff.
Well, and maybe also, don't forget between
I was gonna say
Christmas and New
over-
Year's, there's no school.
I
So
understand
that
there's
will
no
at least
school, but
limit, maybe then we can move an
there's
officer
time
from
for
there
people
to
to go
somewhere else.
exploring.
Right.
Is there?
Lieutenant, are you
That's the
bringing
time
on,
to
are you
test
bringing
the other
on
thing.
Definitely.
tours, or some of the officers working tours solely for this purpose? So they're gonna work a full tour irrespective of whether or not they're handling traffic matters?
These will be additional officers to our regulatory duties.
So it's, and then entire tour, they're working traffic.
Yes, they'll be working traffic, yes. It could go from 7 to 3, depending on having another one for the extra 4 hours. It could be an 8-hour, a 4-hour, or it could be 12-hour, yes.
But either way, they're dedicated to traffic.
Absolutely.
And that won't compromise, other than obviously they're gonna have a lot of working, but to staff the rest of the town,
It would not compromise the rest of the
even
state.
at 3.
That's correct.
And that's under normal circumstances. If there's an emergency, then what happens? Once we're in town. Major auto crash.
We'll handle it with our normal staff as usual.
Okay, one of the questions I have is, and I know this is probably, you know, just maybe a concept that doesn't exist in a paid force, but in a volunteer force, there's mutual aid. So my question to you is if, for example, we could reach out to neighboring towns and say if somebody wants to make overtime on top of their tour, they're trained, they're familiar with the area, could we supplement the Newcastle Police Force with mutual aid from neighboring
You
departments?
could supplement us with mutual aid for an emergency in town if it was possible, like we would normally do. I would not recommend bringing officers from outside our jurisdiction to work.
For traffic control and overtime to make money? No?
Including county?
I think that I am completely then unclear about the kind of police protection or the police oversight that's actually happening a couple of days at the beginning, and now it's only gonna be from this hour to that hour. I think we need to be a little bit more explicit about what our expectations are.
So note 2 currently states 2 uniformed traffic control officers shall be stationed at the intersection of Roaringbrook Road, Route 117 at the access opposite the Horace Greeley School. New traffic signal entrance from December 10th to December 31st for the period from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, and from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. On Saturday and Sundays. And then subsequent stationing of officers and adjustments of times and locations will be determined at the sole discretion of the Newcastle Police Department and the town planner based upon conditions observed in the field.
Then why not err on the side of caution and make it longer now, and we could always roll it back later? And especially if Lieutenant Carroll says potentially we could have a third officer
on the screen.
Staff, and worst case scenario, we're overstaffed and we say
So when you say make it longer, you mean from the December
Duration,
31st?
duration.
January 15th.
Yeah.
Okay.
January 15th.
You know,
And
that,
do we
that-
make that 2, we change that to 3?
I think we change it to 3, we could always roll it back.
Right, so note 2 is gonna be changed to reflect until January 15th, and also to reflect 3 officers, one of which would be stationed at the western entrance, all of which, of course, can be reassigned by the lieutenant and chief in their discretion to meet the needs at that
If we
time.
go to the 15th of January, hopefully we'll be through the Whole Foods opening crush. And things will have settled down a little bit.
We'll have 2 weeks of relatively normal, non-holiday operation.
Yeah, you have to go post New Year's.
Okay, yep, January 15th, 3 officers.
I feel like the concern that the reason we're all sort of focused on this, right, is that what we've come to understand is that police presence in these intersections is the #1 thing that we can do to keep people safe.
Right.
And so I think we wanna err on the side of caution and have as many officers as we feel like we can have there for as long as we feel like it's feasible to have them there for.
Agreed. Okay. Great.
Okay, we're on to.
I would just, I'm sorry.
Almost, I'm just picking up steam.
I'm sorry, I apologize, I would just say, instead of 15th is a Tuesday, why not follow just to that weekend, which is Sunday the 20th, just to keep the weekend traffic.
Motion to amend. So noted.
Thank you.
We're on page 5, phase 2.
It's only a 98-page document.
Yeah, we're about 11% in.
Public hearing.
Well, may I make a suggestion that we can read it faster than we can talk about it? And can we go through as many of these as we can by just saying, are there any comments?
Well, no, I mean, I think to a certain extent, I'm learning things that I can read point number, small print, which I can't even read with these glasses that require a magnifying glass.
Luke, can I ask
We're
before
kind
we
of
move?
zooming in because this is the first hard copy, with everything else has been a PDF. And it's been 36 hours, maybe.
Lou, before we move off of phase 1 and into phase 2, can I just ask for your expert guidance when it comes to the phase 1 conditions that we have imposed to date? and the revisions that have been made to the MPT plan, are there any further safety enhancements that you're, in your expert opinion, we should be including in this phase one plan? Or have we now requested everything that we possibly could request to make this as safe as possible, wanting to move it from something that's safe enough to something that is as safe as we can possibly have it be for an MPT plan?
We could wrap the entire intersection in cellophane and not.
Bubble wrap.
Yeah, bubble wrap everything. I think we're at a point with
How
the
much does that
exception.
cost?
I'll say this is a very safe MPT plan. The only thing that probably would make it safer is to have some type of better barrier between the pedestrian and the travel lane going in the northbound direction.
That's
I
something
think-
that's workable.
Right, and I think that really is the only other thing that you could add here.
Thank you.
Okay, the other thing I wanted to ask, sort of bringing up again, because I know that they provided us as being like a co-insured, because it is our road, I think this was an issue that raised earlier on. Have we, I don't know if I don't know where Jill is.
Back there, right back there.
Jill, have we discussed this at all with our towns insured to make sure that this idea of being co-insured would actually pass through and minimize our risk or eliminate it, better yet? Nick, you
So
have
we've had discussions with the town's insurance broker with the suggested language, and there's a whole question as to what is that liability risk, but if there's an accident, sure, you'd be sued, so the question is the coverage there, and he believes that yes, not only is there coverage under the town's existing $11 million of public officers policy as well as general liability policy, there would also be coverage if it's crafted in the way that's being requested from the applicant's insurance
And what
as
is
well.
the applicant, I'm just sorry, what is the insurance they're providing us?
So the applicant has provided us with naming the town as an additional insured on a, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's an $850 million policy?
Yes, I adjusted the Christmas list at home. And we were able to get our partner Prudential to roll in their blanket liability policy and moved our liability from, which I believe was 10 up to 850 million, which was a number that we could never touch as developers.
Right, which is in addition to the insurance provided by our contractors with respect to the work that's being done for the construction.
So you're an insurance man, what does that mean? Is that all good?
Yeah, I've talked with Les and Nick on this, so I've given them the conditions that we're going to require from each
Okay,
of the
so you feel that
subcontractors
we're
and contractors.
adequately protected?
If all those conditions are.
Yes, if all those conditions are fulfilled, yeah.
Just
Okay.
out of
So we're
curiosity.
waiting for that documentation, I guess, right?
Yes.
Just
Oh,
out
so that's not part of, that
It's
documentation
not
is
in
yet
here.
to
They
be
provide-
generated?
They provided us with proof of this insurance that Mr.
Okay.
Charney has mentioned, and we provided them with the language that Bob has provided.
Okay, thank you.
Does any of that language address the fact that the planning board is not mentioned specifically as an additional insured in that town clause?
Because the planning board is part of the town, you're all
Okay,
mentioned, covered.
because I didn't know if we were an assign or we're not an employee.
You're volunteers, you're all.
I heard we were like an independent organization per the code, so it makes us nervous sometimes.
Next one, where are we?
So we're on phase two, and the first condition is that implementation and maintenance of all steps identified in phase one, that we've spent a little bit of time on, is part of phase two, right? And there's not many other things, right, in phase two.
I have a question now for you, and this is a serious question. It seems to me in looking at this, phase two is basically, it's triggered by the utility poles relocated. It says phase two parenthetically with utility poles relocated. Is that what's doing that?
No, phase two is the oncoming of
additional
additional
retail.
retail.
Okay,
That's phase two.
so this is a big issue. And I think we really have to spend some time on this because is there really to be a phase two until we have, what is phase two? I mean, I'm looking at it saying telephone poles removed. You
So
folks are
phase-
telling me it's gonna be a change here. What are the metrics? Some of us have been thinking in terms of the TCO that we're talking about right now is Whole Foods, period. No phase one, no
And
phase two.
Chase Bank was discussed in that.
Yeah, yes, okay, yeah.
Right. So phase one is the opening of Whole Foods and Chase Bank.
Right.
the steps set forth in phase one must occur before that TCO is issued for Whole
Correct.
Foods.
Right.
If they want to get a TCO for additional retail space above Chase Bank and Whole Foods, they need to complete all the items in
A
phase two.
separate TCO. It's
Is
not
that separate
folded into
TCO?
this.
Correct, a separate TCO.
Fine.
A new TCO for
First
those.
one would be limited to 43,000 square feet.
Good.
Right.
Okay.
So they have to come back again with a new TCO for a new TCO.
They have to go
building
to the
inspector.
building inspector to get a new TCO. And the building inspector won't be allowed to do it unless these conditions have been satisfied.
So, but then, okay, so let's play out Bob's scenario. What happens if we don't allow further retail to open after Whole Foods? And now the utility poles have been relocated. Isn't there a phase during which we would have that sort of middle plan, that plan that includes the sort of striping between the southbound lane and the right turn lane? So are you now saying if there isn't a phase two retail opening, there isn't a phase two traffic plan?
No.
The phase two traffic plan, I don't know if we're saying that, but the phase two traffic plan only comes into existence if they're seeking additional, retail, but
So
they have
we're
to.
stuck in phase one?
They shifted MLT without
doesn't
pole,
make
with
sense.
without the pole, that's that second
Right.
diagram.
They're gonna shift the poles anyway.
Because they have to get their permit.
They're gonna shift the poles
CO.
anyway,
exactly.
but
They're
on the,
work-
on the shifting of the poles, there's no obligation for us to give them the next TCO.
Right.
But the intersection will function according to the phase two traffic plan, because that'll be in place.
Right,
The
okay.
extent, the extent to which, I'm sorry, the extent to which it'll be striped that way, it'll be designed that way, to the extent that it functions the way it would have in the phase two if you had the extra square footage is another matter. But the point is that it's in place, it's already done. It's just done without granting the next level of retail because we got concerned about phase one, it wasn't working.
I think there's no chance that they're not gonna ask at some point for Lifetime to open, so we're gonna get to phase two.
But I think there's a
Because
very strong
Lifetime
chance
wants to
that we
open.
would not approve that. I think there's
Well,
a very
right
strong.
Well, but
now,
I'm saying you have to
and
go to phase
it-
two
it
at that
actually
point anyway,
doesn't come
so-
back to the boards for a
That's the issue.
hands-on look.
Right, it
And
goes
I
to the
think
building inspector.
It goes to the building inspector, but I think part of our due diligence as the boards that are approving this makeshift travel plan, part of our due diligence is there's no phase two until they come back to the town board and the planning board and make a presentation and tell us how phase one has worked and share with us traffic information and share with us accident information, whatever metrics, you know,
Sure. We take that
whatever
authority
metrics we
from
think
the
are
building
important or
inspector?
whatever metrics our consultant and staff
Well, you're not-
thinks important.
You're not taking, you're sort of suspending his authority until those conditions are satisfied. So what you're doing is.
Satisfies to our.
Right, so what you're doing is saying applicant, if you wanna get to phase two, here's what you have to satisfy, so they know now what they need to do. But you're saying before they can get the before the building inspector could get a permission to issue the TCO, they've gotta come back and check in with
Yeah, well,
two
there's gonna be,
boards.
it could be another number of elements. One, obviously, the reporting on what's happened in phase one, and recommendations for any changes from the police and from the traffic engineer. And the second thing, obviously, you're gonna test phase two and
It's a proverbial short
and get
leash.
reports on those testing. And then you'd have an opportunity, at least, you know, kind of my mind charting it out, that all that information would go back to the boards, and either you could do it a number of ways, either a formal approval or a period of time within which to take further action, and if you decide not to take further action, then the building inspector would go ahead with his own discretion. It'd be, you know, there's a number of ways to do it.
Well, I think, you know, it should at least include a public hearing where all this information is brought to the boards in a public fashion so that the people who are living with it can comment on it and we can learn from what they've experienced too.
And I think we should have objective metrics that we need to hear from you, Lou, in terms of what is going to be the acceptable level of service. We know it might be that, okay, fine, but is it going to be 6 minutes? So we should really set, I think it seems to me, we should set certain metrics now so that the applicant knows what we're going to be looking for objectively in terms of, you know, what we hear from the schools, what we hear from DPW, what we hear from the police, the public, but also certain metrics, you know, certain performance metrics before we consider anything else. What has been the experience? But I think with your help, we should be as objective as possible to help the applicant and help us as well to see what those measurements are. I'm concerned with what Tom said before. You have we're going to see some extended periods of time, and we need to know how bad this is. And also, as we go into phase two, whenever that is, we're also going to be anticipating, don't forget, we're gonna be anticipating the construction of the wall and all that interruption. So it seems to me that we need to set boundaries, reasonable boundaries, that everyone can work within, as standards of, and I couldn't begin to do this, but, you know, turning to you, I hope you can help us, and with the applicant.
Yeah, I think we can set them, even before we start, but certainly collecting that information along the way.
Right.
That will actually make the record.
You won't really need to know, you won't really know, I don't think, you won't know what you need to do until you know what the problem is.
Right, you gotta have, even if you do have certain metrics, they can't be exclusive. It's gotta be able to factor in all the
Needs to be
information.
an open door.
So, but there may be certain criteria that can be identified, but it has to be broader.
And what are you recommending as the trigger point for when this would occur? Would we set a date by which we wanted this to happen, or is this simply whenever the applicant is ready to come to us?
I was gonna ask exactly the same
Well, I think the reporting goes
question.
on, and the reporting on phase one would be a natural consequence of phase one operations, and independent of whenever the request came for two. And then, at what point, and the applicant will know that phase two needs to be tested, and there needs to be analysis based and reports based upon those tests. There's gonna have to be feedback by the board, so there's gotta be a lot of lead time for all that to happen.
Are we thinking though this is January, February? Do we have an idea when this could be coming
What
out?
we're hearing is January.
January, before the 20th, or that
Uh,
date? No.
We won't know enough before the time
This is-
the positions moved.
So phase two is predicated on the poll coming out, right, that last poll? And that's when.
Well, it can't happen
barrier comes
before
in.
that.
Right, and the
Right.
poll is scheduled.
Can't have a condition on it, okay, thank you.
Based on the meeting that we had
Based
on
it,
Friday, the polls are gonna be in place for,
8
you know,
weeks.
at least 8 weeks, and, you know, possibly longer depending on, you know, getting all 5 of the utilities to get there and do the work that they need to do,
March
and snow.
It's called double poll legislation.
let's-
Moving along.
I have a
And
suggestion.
that's what actually
It's
makes me
not
go back to the
contractual.
question, which is if we start getting into the beginning of April, when you can start to pour concrete, right? It almost feels like,
We can
I
do
mean,
concrete
asphalt.
sooner.
It almost feels, or sooner if you can do it sooner, it almost feels like having an interim phase two and then having a phase three are redundant. It's sort of like you should kind of try and go as quickly from phase one to phase three, if that's where we are, because the reality of the situation is, we are looking probably at like the end of February, then you've gotta mobilize, then you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
The thing is, we don't know what's gonna happen. The poll could get taken away in a week,
No,
it could get
it
taken
won't.
away in
It
8
can't.
weeks.
Excuse me, I have a
So,
suggestion
I
that
think
goes through all
this
of
is
this,
fine.
maybe. I would suggest that we get weekly progress reports. And Lou works with with our staff and with the applicant, and we get weekly progress reports as to what has occurred, what is ahead of schedule, what's behind schedule, and when will it be done, and that gets done, weekly. I used to do this in the military, and it works. It keeps your nose focused on what you wanna try and accomplish.
So let me just share something here. There was a meeting, I think, that was called by the town. Rob was there, Jill, where's Jill?
Jill's in the back, right?
Jill was there, Ivy was there, and I was there at the construction trailer. This was on just last Friday. And the subject was the polls and how soon can they come down, what's the process of doing that. Turns out that the first question was to the team, to their team, was, where's your critical path schedule? Right? There are 4 moving parts in this problem, only 4. There is moving the 4 providers, Con Ed is already off these polls, to get the providers of the communications stuff to move their stuff, and there are 4 of them, but they have to move in sequence from top down. And this is the first time, well, we asked, where's the critical path schedule? There wasn't one. And the concern that we had was, well, if there isn't one, how do we know when we're gonna get to where we're supposed to be?
His idea is better than mine.
And so we sat there and tried to make a critical path schedule with the team in the room. And from what we understand, it will be they start with, First Light is the first provider, Crown Castle's the next one down, they work from the top of the pole down. Crown Castle's the next one, Cablevision's the next one, Verizon's the final one. And the best case, them working in sequence, was 8 weeks. That's the best case.
They said they use the same contractor, and maybe they work concurrently. We didn't know if that was possible yet, but they were gonna try, if the utility, communication companies use the same contractor, two of the utility companies could be working concurrently. That's what they're gonna try to do.
On the same pole.
Yeah, only Altice and Verizon.
So it was Altice and I believe that was.
It's a possibility.
Crown Castle.
So I guess.
But to say that it's unfair to say that we haven't had a critical path. We don't take a project like this and not have a critical path.
Where's the one for the
It's just, I'm sorry, but it's, these utilities, we can throw at them every critical path that we can devise, and they don't adhere to it. So, that meeting on Friday was to say, hey, here we are, we're having the support of the town trying to get this done. And we're trying to pressure them as much as possible. I don't think it's fair to say that we don't have a critical path.
Well, this is what
But not
okay, I'm
half
sorry,
of the very
this
first
is,
people to
you know
move
what's,
weren't in the
you know
room.
what's not fair, is that we should have to show up and force that meeting. This is a meeting that I think should have happened like 6 months ago.
We've been meeting with them for 9 months. Every week. Okay, we've given them $1 million check 16 months ago, we've been meeting with them for 9 months. Con Ed skated at that meeting because they were already done. So now it's the issue of the low voltage providers, which has been difficult too. But,
What's holding them
the
up?
issue was Con Ed holding everybody up for the last 16 months.
You can't start the.
I'm sorry, I don't.
And John and Dave, did you get confirmation from New York State DOT that they were going to be able to remove the traffic box that was on the pole that's on the southeast corner of that intersection? And that metal traffic pole, because that was a critical thing that needed to happen in order for them to be able to move from the old poles to the new poles. Because that was one more, that's in the process.
And that's the controller that controls the lights that we want to change.
Actually, we could have had it done by Friday, with all the activity and us doing the testing of the MPT plan. What we're doing tomorrow is just the,
I apologize, but I have to leave. I'm gonna leave you in hands of Don here. I have a family issue that happened during the day with my mom and a diabetic event. And so I need to get back so I could see the doctor and her tonight, and I apologize.
Can I ask you one
Yep.
question before you go?
In your, sorry, no.
You guys always.
I got 2 minutes.
Ivy, why don't you walk him out to his car and ask the question?
No, because I want everybody to hear it, which is that if we were to move forward with the implementation of this plan and the placement of the police officers, and we allowed Whole Foods to open as they have requested this weekend, in your expert opinion, would the situation be safer next week with Whole Foods opening and our MPT plan going into place with those officers than it is today?
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, today's a
Yes, it
construction
would.
site, you mean than before.
Yeah, the existing condition.
No, I mean today. I mean today
Even
with the
today.
construction site and no guaranteed officers out there from 7 to 7.
Even without the officers, just the safety
You
improvements
have
that
to
are
do
part
it
of
now,
this.
right, it'll be safer than today, and you have to do it, you're bound to do it now.
All right, Lou, thank you, good luck with it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Lou.
Come on, take the hot seat.
So I know we have a public hearing scheduled, we also have some more of this to review, is there? You gonna take us through this, Don?
Did we wanna work our way through phase 2 and phase 3, point by point like Lou was?
Can I just answer what Ivy was asking, if you don't mind? He asked about the control box and the signals. We were gonna, we're doing the pedestrian crosswalk tomorrow. We were gonna continue and actually have that accomplished by the end of the day Friday. But we're in getting this MPT plan in place and saying that you wanna test it and see how it works. If I had Nikon out there doing that re-signalization work with bucket trucks and stuff, it would just cause havoc.
Right.
So we made a decision, say, let's put it off till next week, or let's see what happens, and then we'll be able to proceed with that. So it is in the works, okay?
So is that wire, does that work on the overhead wires considered construction, or is that gonna go ahead and during this phase when.
That's how they can get rid of the poles, that's utility work.
That's utility.
That's utility, not construction, it's utility, okay, okay.
And if they get rid of that pole, then
But
one of
it's
the.
still gonna be one lane traffic or
Well,
whatever
they, I
during the
think they're
interim,
gonna work on
yeah.
the shoulder. They're gonna work on the shoulder. And by getting rid of that pole.
We have to do it though.
Are they gonna work on the
they may have to
shoulder, or are
move
they
the
gonna work
wires
behind
over or
the
something. I
barrier?
don't know, it saves some time.
Are they gonna work on the shoulder, or are they gonna work behind the barrier?
There's no shoulder.
No, as much as they can. So it's really that most forward pole that might be the biggest challenge.
Right, the one right on the corner of Route 117.
Can I throw out a suggestion?
If it's
Yell at
short.
the messenger.
Exactly.
Given, you know, how much time we've already spent, given a preview of the issues that are going to be involved with phase 2 and phase 3, is it possible to focus at this point on phase 1? With the understanding that phase 1, if approved, will be in effect for several weeks, which will give the boards additional time to work their way through phase 2 and phase 3?
Especially if they're gonna come back to us as opposed to going to
Yeah.
the building inspector.
That list is gonna be modified and amended.
It would,
Right, it's
but it
also
would
coming
just
back
have
to
to
us.
be
It
makes
stipulated,
sense when
it
it's
is
coming
coming back
back.
to us.
To us, right.
Yeah, that it's coming back
You
to
don't
us
have
and not
foresight
going
now,
directly to the.
I think that's
Well,
brilliant.
Les, I just have one other question for you. This, and I know this is like probably never gonna happen because everyone's saying there's no way that Lifetime Fitness isn't gonna open, no way that these other places aren't gonna open. But let's say we do kind of go into like April, May, June, there's this sort of open period, where, you know, whether it's within their control or out of their control, but I think there's we have no sort of statute of limits, you know, for this temporary phase 1 plan to be in existence. Is there a way that we can curtail the length by which the TCO is, so not only do we have the carrot of, hey man, you get to get your retail, but we have the stick of saying, hey man, we're gonna.
Potential condition would be 1 3-month CO with 1 renewal.
Okay, that works.
Or whatever you want, however you want to do it.
Is that in there now?
I think opening Lifetime Fitness is
Right, but it's,
But I mean,
can be in the resolution that
right,
the boards adopt.
but I'm just suggesting, I'm saying, I understand that the carrot of having the retail people in there, but I think we need a stick.
Yeah, I think that has been on our minds from the beginning, and we'll
Thank you.
obviously draft
I
something
feel-
for your review.
Thank you.
I think it's an excellent idea to see if we can finish up phase 1 and suspend the discussion for the other phases until a future time.
Yep. Right.
Lucky you.
But there is,
Well, I think there was one point that Lou was excited to talk about. Which was the due diligence we did with Actually hides it well. the level of service study and if we can just spend maybe 5 minutes with that.
Give them both
To
sides.
show, I know. Passing of the bow tie.
I'm having a hard time concentrating.
I'll get in trouble.
alright, what page do you want us to go to? What
No,
document?
this is in response to the page 8 and 9 about the results of the capacity analysis that the applicant did with the traffic model.
Don't believe this. I mean, honest, God, did you guys vet these numbers?
We vet the numbers, so we did a little, we went out for the.
Folks, let him talk,
let
please,
him-
no conversation, I'm sorry.
So, well, we received the whole model, we received all the
good,
backup
thank
data,
you.
we received all the data, we went out, we did our own counts, we did our own observations. Now, unfortunately, we were only able to get out there for the weekday PM highway peak hour before the construction stuff started, so we found a kind of normal condition that we can build off as a baseline. This slide has some of the, well, shows you the change in volumes as we go from our existing conditions to the increment, that's the new traffic that's generated by just the supermarket and the bank. The applicant's traffic study back in September, I believe you had the bank, you had the full retail and
1,050.
yes. So this was less than that. This is what we can expect coming online over the next few weeks. Oh, I don't think so. Well,
Wait.
No, potentially. wait a second, you have to make suppositions when you do these models. I hate to be rude, but you know, your models are based on the 2012 manual, which are based on average grocery stores, average hours. This is not going to be average. Everyone has talked about, Lou has admitted this.
Yeah.
It's not gonna be average for the first month or so. So the interesting thing for us to understand is what are we doing in terms of ratcheting up that model for the anticipated run up that we're going to see in the first few weeks.
Yeah, on the trip
maybe the Whole
generation.
Foods
So-
is 60,000 feet
Trip
your model,
generation.
not
This
40.
is, this, I mean, you know, excuse me, but I went through all those things last night and I looked at it, and by the way, you know, I'm not quite sure it's loaded or not, but the date you did the study was September 20th. Not sure it has any impact, it was the date after Yom Kippur, I know the schools are back up, but it's, I don't know if
A lot
people,
of people,
exactly.
it ends at the 19th of the evening, a lot of people are
Right, so,
traveling on the 20th.
You know, there are a lot of things in here, so we'd like to hear, I think I'd like to hear, what are the suppositions for the spike that we're
We didn't surge test it for like that first weekend, the Whole Foods would be open. But we can set with you some expectations of what you'll see under the conditions that follow. And then you can see, you know, if it's twice as much traffic, then you'll be able to have something to scale off of.
Can I
Get
just,
appreciation.
I think that we're asking for the trip generation rates that you use for this particular retailer. Did you just use a standard 40,000 square feet for like an A&P, or
Yeah,
did
we-
you factor in Whole Foods?
We did not go into we did not do a count at a comparable Whole Foods and have a specific count. We used a standard supermarket.
All I know is in the hometown that I grew up, Manchester by the Sea, Massachusetts, there was a Whole Foods that opened up in Beverly. And it's not a dissimilar layout, so Route 128, called the Sawmill Parkway, alright? And what they had to do is they actually redid the entire exit on, you know, your on and off ramps in order to be able to accommodate Whole Foods traffic. And people are coming from Gloucester, from Peabody, from all over the place to go to this Whole Foods. So I agree with Tom, it's not just the spike because of the excitement of a fabulous new grocery store, which is super exciting, right? But it's also going to be the continued spike that you're going to have because along this particular corridor between Mount Kisco and Pleasantville, you've got Key Foods down in Pleasantville, but I can tell you the Stop and Shop or whatever it is up in Mount Kisco, it's like you're going to be pulling people from all over the place coming down. There's not that many great places to shop. So I think that, you know, when I look at some of these numbers, I really think we need to make sure that we're realistic in the traffic. So
Yeah.
whether it's a 50% increase over the standard model, it's 60%, 75, whatever it is, but at some point, even if, you know, we used to kind of call them a sensitivity analysis, to find out at what point things break. I'm not asking you to necessarily do this, but I'm asking for us to not kind of take, you know, Pollyanna-ish assumptions loaded into the traffic that's gonna actually happen at one of the busiest intersections in
I
town.
wouldn't characterize them as Pollyannish on purpose.
No, I'm not saying they're on purpose, but if
Okay.
it's, you know, a standard, you know,
But can I, can I just observe that Whole Foods has their studies for their market area and where they believe their growth is coming from. And that's how they make, as you know, that's how they make these decisions. And for me, that's where the traffic's gonna come from, is that reservoir of people, and it goes far beyond I believe it goes far beyond Mount Kisco or even Yorktown, and maybe it goes to Catone and Pound Ridge, I don't know, I talked to people in Pound Ridge where they'll go up to the one in Connecticut,
Greenwich.
Portchester, or there's one in Portchester,
No.
Greenwich.
Both, yeah.
Yeah.
There's one of each.
Okay, so you get my point, it's not
Yeah,
just the
we-
local
we
market,
get your
it's
point,
a lot of people, and they're not all gonna come the first week, they're gonna, they'll come the third week.
We understand that, and I understand, that's what the framework I was trying to say, that I couldn't come in here and make up a number and say I just doubled it without having a baseline to do that.
I didn't ask you to do that,
No, I know you weren't, I know you
I
weren't.
was just asking for the facts.
I'm giving you the facts.
Okay.
That, and I told you, we didn't go out, and ideally you would go and find a comparable
store.
Whole Foods
And I
do that,
don't
so-
think that even the area that we're talking about, I mean, Chappaqua is more affluent than Beverly, but in terms of the affluence of the area and the affluence of the people in the immediate area, it's like a lot of similarities.
So, with that as an understanding, and you can, considering that we use the standard traffic engineering, methodology procedures. You know, there are certain things that we anticipate are going to happen. And one of which you'll notice in the middle increment slide is that there's gonna be to a certain degree, a reassignment of traffic that's already on 117 that's going to be detouring to the Whole Foods via Roaring Brook Road.
Could you show us that, point to where you mean those numbers so we understand?
So there's gonna be some volume on the main line.
Right.
Of 117, that's gonna be a pass-by trail. That used to go northbound on 117, that's now going to start going to
Right.
Whole Foods on the way home. And the same in the opposite direction. So with these volumes, you know, let's take a look at the next slide. This is a little bit harder to read, I'd say. This shows the results of what we saw out there, the days that we were out there when we were doing our observations, and then how we took the existing numbers that we interpreted and calibrated the model to reflect what was being observed in the field. And this shows, for example, in the northbound direction, we have a level of service F with a delay of 135 seconds. But more importantly, that reflects a queue that extends back 240 feet. Similar in the southbound direction, when we calibrated the model, we show a queue that extends back 390 feet. A little bit up around the bend.
What time of day is this?
This is that's 5 to 6.
5 to 6, thank you.
The weekday highway peak hour.
A 390 feet queue to go straight or to go left, I'm sorry.
That's to go southbound.
So south, I apologize.
Yeah. When you get back to there, the two movements are.
And is that the timing there, does that count the 110-second cycle of the?
Yeah, so
Okay.
it gets.
So that, I can't see what it says there going northbound, does it say 156 seconds?
135.6.
135, so 110 of that is the cycle of the light?
No, well, that's the
green sign.
the delay, the average delay for the vehicles approaching from that approach, from that direction.
Some people are more, some people are less. You
So
either
over
catch
2
the light
minutes.
or you don't.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So what this indicates that once you get around that 200 foot queue, there's gonna be a part of the population that's arriving at the back of the queue that's not gonna be able to clear the intersection
In
when
that
it goes
cycle.
to green direct, yeah.
So,
Now-
did you project out how long that queue's gonna get?
Well, and then this is the average queue too, so this
Oh,
is
yes,
could
I
be
hear
more or
you.
less. However, when we implement some of the MTT strategies, we will see a reduction to what we observed with pre-construction. Where that northbound queue on 117,
No wonder he was excited to talk about this.
we finally had some good news, drops to 180 feet. And that southbound with the additional left turn, those queues, the additional right turn drops down to, the inside line is 170, the outside line is 190.
Average.
Average. So now we're still at that, point where there's gonna be a part of the population that's arriving at the back of the queue that may not clear
Can
the
you go
intersection.
back one slide? I just wanna compare the lower left quadrant. I just don't remember what
And
those numbers were.
your color diagrams, are they accurate with the time? So
Yeah, they're
Okay.
scaled out to
So
the
in
actual
the
distance.
next slide, you'll be in front of the street, you won't be blocking the box.
Yes,
Okay,
with the MPT plan in place.
gotcha.
And the last line, we'll put them right next, all three next to each other.
Can you, oh, okay, you will, thank you.
Okay?
Yeah.
Then with some, this one, this interim MPT plan was without the left turn. This next one, we studied the condition with the final approved plan. After everything in place, that now will include that northbound left turn, which I believe is the only difference between, from the modeling perspective. And then we continue to see some of the queuing continue to drop. So in the northbound direction, the two lines are 55 and 85 feet. And in the southbound direction, during the peak hours, we have 190 on the inside and 215 on the outside line.
That's significant.
So can I ask a question and go
That's
back to,
significant.
I think
Could
the
you go-
next one, he's got them all.
could you
right here.
do me, could you do me a favor and go back to the future diversion of trips that go into Whole Foods once it's open? Where's that graphic?
Well, we just have this figure here.
It's right there in the increment.
This is the increment for the Whole Foods.
Right, and so what normally would be through northbound traffic, there's a component of that which is now wanting to make a left turn either at the intersection or at the entrance to the property further up.
Yeah.
And that is 81 cars in the middle one?
17.
17 is going straight.
But that's a reduction. Those are the people that left the through lane and went into the left turn.
So that left the through lane went at the left turn lane?
Right.
And
Right.
260, 207, okay, got it.
Basically, what they're saying is the net traffic increase is 81 minus 17, so my math is, I can't think, I'm tired.
260 goes through.
Right, so what they're saying is that, no, not 260, the net,
64.
thank
64
you.
additional vehicles.
64 additional vehicles for the opening of Whole Foods between, heading northbound between 5 and 6 p.m.
No,
Well,
but
what's
the
that
81,
one?
81's a left-hand.
No, but cumulative northbound traffic, so what they're saying is that some of the people that were traveling northbound for 1 hour. It's really low.
It's very low.
Super low.
It's the 1 hour volume from that approach, it doesn't include coming off the other approaches.
Is this based on the Macer information at this point, or is it ratcheted up with your supposition for a spike?
The same assumptions with how the traffic would enter and depart the site. So,
Right, after the go.
So they're gonna be back to
Relevant for phase one.
And not only that, it's holiday.
It's not 64
Additional and.
Heading north.
It's only headed north. They're also gonna come off the Sawmill, they're also gonna be
But
heading
if
south.
26 heading south, it's like whatever,
They're also
so.
gonna be coming across from.
I feel
So
that
there might
this
be
is too conservative,
200
but
total.
you know,
I just,
whatever it is, it's the numbers. Can you go down to the comparison at the end, not the pretty chart with red, yellow, green. I'm
Yeah.
talking like numbers. One that says bad to good, no, I get that part.
which one do you want?
That one, the queuing one. Okay. So the people that are actually bearing the brunt of this are the people on the south side of Roaringbrook Road who are going, that traffic is gonna be basically to the high school all the time.
I think the point that I would want you to take away from this is that making, doing a little bit of due diligence work on what was previously done. What your expectations can be once the interim NPT plan comes online, is that we will be experiencing some queuing. There's there's gonna be conditions where you will be unable to clear that intersection within the same cycle. But however, we don't anticipate situations where traffic's gonna be extending back 1,000 feet in each direction.
but you don't,
It's gonna be,
I hear you, but that's on average.
On
through the-
average.
Through the hour, and I guess you're suggesting that the peak within the hour is not gonna be so significant, it'll be different from the average.
now, so right now, our average is showing that we're just clearing within the cycle.
I know that, but I was.
So I'm saying that you can anticipate a little bit more than that.
I waited 6 minutes to get through this intersection today, and maybe that was unique, maybe usually it's 4 or 3 o'clock, but
It's
if you
not.
look, if you look at the
For
data.
years, you can't get through in one cycle. It doesn't
Today.
matter, even without it, you
Right.
can't get through in one cycle, it
Today.
just doesn't happen. Not even with the construction, for years.
So my question,
So-
I understand, so my question is, the extra increment that Whole Foods is going to add to that condition, is it severe enough that we ought to be concerned about it, or is it just an incremental add to a bad condition?
What they're saying is that what we're doing is
That's the
we're
issue.
approving.
That's the
issue, they approved this.
So one of the things that I find, no, but Lisa, let me just put it this way,
It wasn't approved for this intersection with no left turn. That wasn't approved. That's the approval
We're
that's
gonna have a
being
cop
asked.
there, we're gonna have an officer there.
So
for the
anyways, I find this very helpful
Right.
because,
Find the left
for me
turn
personally,
to be-
because at least it puts down into kind of a common framework
Just gotta keep
that
us-
we can sit and look at and say, look, we expected the interim plan to do this. We are gonna be measuring up against this, and if this doesn't do this, then what we do. This is actually very helpful, so, thank you.
When we go from.
And I have seen traffic numbers from lots of different people, and I gotta tell you, this is the easiest to understand traffic number, grid.
And this drives at exactly what Bob was talking
Right.
about, which is the ability to put in some metrics to allow us to
And I
assess.
think
And
what
I would
Bob
like to
and Tom
include
is-
things like automobile accidents and, some just basic
What
safety
assumptions we need to
statistics.
make going into phase two, we're not gonna need to make going into phase three. Because on phase two, because we'll know, we made some assumptions of how traffic's gonna arrive and depart the site, how well utilized that northern driveway is gonna be. And whether or not that's accurate or not, we're gonna know.
Then what do we do? Whole Foods is open. You can't really
We'll
shut
be
it down.
we'll be able to further adjust the timing plan to allocate the true demand that's being placed on the intersection.
And we have the carrot of waiting on the
how that
additional retail opening.
Right, we have
So they're
to,
coming to us
before phase two
requesting-
opens, they have to come
Right.
back
No,
to us.
no, wait, yes, you had the carrot.
And we
I'm
have
not
the
doing that,
cops
but-
there
but-
for the first 3 weeks.
No, you're gonna have the cops there, because the condition, does the situation change between the phase one and phase two northbound? Is it better with the phase two
Yes.
northbound because you have the right hand?
Yes, we'll have the additional lanes in.
Okay.
I suggest, since a lot of this is gonna be pushed off to phase two anyway, let's go into the public hearing, if you agree. And take some public comments. I think most people that are gonna be in the public hearing were here for the work session, so we don't have to repeat everything. Take
No,
some
actually,
public
we've got a lot
comments.
of people out.
Before we go, Miss Wesco, my wife just sent me a text, she received today in the mail, or we received in the mail today. Hey neighbor, we're here almost, grand opening December 12th. 480 North Bedford Road from Whole Foods, and I would assume it's a gaffe and a big gaffe that you've known for a week that we're not opening on December 12th. So my question is, who was this sent to in terms of what
You got
the
the
parameters?
I got that
Who-
too.
Who was this sent to? What municipalities, how far, how many? When was it sent? And I understand from Lieutenant Carroll, that we're gonna have some staffing here, but we're talking now tomorrow. If we get an influx of people who've received this, irrespective of what was in the newspaper, what are we doing and how are you going to go to bat for us to protect our community in terms of dollars and accidents? Because this is not ready to rock and roll tomorrow as we're discussing these phases and what we wanna do. So I realize it's a mistake, but I'm just disappointed that this went out when for a week ago we said this wasn't happening.
And how do we correct?
So let me
And is there steps, and there really isn't any steps, what can we do?
I think a corrective text, the marketing department could probably send out a
Well, hold
corrective
on.
text too.
Well, there was corrected.
Sure, so I'll answer that in two parts. So the first part is when we sent the press release a month ago, we had our distribution list to hit go at the same time the press release was. So we sent that out a month ago, and that was targeted to hit at this date.
So there was no way to stop that once
It's
it.
hard to stop those flyers on a distribution list. What we did do when we found out a week ago that we were not gonna open was we pulled back on everything else. Pulled back on all social media, made sure that we contacted every supplier partner, everyone that we could, that would bring any traffic in. And it's just unfortunately these flyers will
You
hit go
haven't
at
canceled your Facebook event for the grand opening tomorrow yet.
Yes, we sent email, we sent a wide distribution list out that we canceled
have a
everything.
Facebook event.
But there was, so the issue is
My friends are still accepting.
certainly we would have liked to have known this was.
You're going.
We would have liked to have known this was being sent, so we could have taken, our lieutenant and the chief could have taken steps to say, hey, forget social media. So the next question is, number one, again, or I'm gonna rephrase that, let me say that again. Do you know how many of these were sent, so we can at least prepare our police to say, we need to be ready for tomorrow possibly?
Sure, I don't know right now, I can find out for you very quickly on a text. The second part to your question that I would love to answer is, we are prepared to have our team members, our store team leader Alex, in the lot tomorrow. For anybody that pulls in, just to let them know that we're not opening tomorrow, we're sorry for the inconvenience, and see what the message is after we close up tonight, and be able to communicate that, and we will do that, we will make sure that we've got that at every point.
Okay, and you'll speak with Lieutenant Carroll to make sure that we're prepared and we have staffing from the officers in case we do get an influx? And hopefully that this is, no one looks at snail mail anymore, so hopefully that works, but.
I hope that you are correct.
At least in this year,
I wanna say that we tried to cover all the major forms, and that I will find out
Jill, can we do a code red also for tomorrow? It only goes to our community, so you say it's not opening.
Joe and I were just discussing, we do have hopefully it's not over. Right, we have 2 officers coming in to assist with construction tomorrow as well. So there's gonna be 1 lane closures, it's just gonna be a backlog if it actually happens, it's just gonna be slower and slower and slower.
I think council just said, yeah, right, the message boards can pump out.
I can also, Senator Nix-a-lot, providing.
Yeah, message boards are.
But the message
That only
boards
that
could
only
say.
goes to Newcastle.
Right, but people are coming down.
Much
So we
louder.
don't know how wide this went, right? This was our neighbors, right, so we're thinking it's.
Mount Pleasant, Mount
Well, it's
Kisco.
also been in the Journal News and the Examiner and,
When you get this in the mail, it may be true.
I'm just saying, it's
Oh,
not.
no, it went to like 30,000.
So I had one other question that I wanted to ask Whole Foods about, and that was, as we do open, we're having a hard time, as you can see, we're not real fast. So we're having a hard time trying to monitor and even, if you will, push back a little bit on the traffic and so it's the interest. Would it be possible for Whole Foods to not have any special promotions for the first couple of weeks, first 2 weeks, and just open, so like, obviously you'll announce it, but not, like gift tickets or specials or coffee and that kind of stuff, just, we're opening, we're here, but if we're gonna start putting out, free teddy bears and free coffee and first 200 people here get free television or some broccoli,
Organic broccoli.
no, but it's sustainable, organic, yes, green range broccoli. Can we, would you do that for us?
I would, and I know we have to go to the other.
But just so you know, Ivy just pulled up the Facebook event. There's over 1,000 accepts. So just on the Facebook event itself, which is live and everyone thinks it's happening or making plans to going, they've accepted. It's in their calendar.
They may have accepted and actually read the news though recently,
Yeah, I'm
and not
probably one of those,
unaccepted.
I'm one of those
I mean,
accepted,
so
by the
am
way.
I.
So it's $9.99, oh wait, $9.98.
Bob's question to Bob to answer the
But
question.
I wouldn't mind hearing the
Yes.
end of your question before you got interrupted.
That's okay, I was gonna say for 5 seconds, I just wanna say, thank you for giving me an opportunity. I hear the concerns, I acknowledge them. I'm here to help and to support in any way and be a partner for all of you. In terms of special events, the answer is yes, we can table everything. We actually don't have any special events scheduled for the first 2 weeks. The only thing we were planning on doing was providing free coffee for the bread breaking because it's cold outside. If you all choose that that's not something you want us to do, I can 100%. I just wanted to be able to warm people up a little bit and we will do whatever if that looks like.
I don't know what the bread breaking is.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's a
We're
bread
a
breaking.
food, we're in the food industry, we do not cut a ribbon, we break bread. And it's a way to just bring bread together and just relax. So we hope to break bread with all of you. And if we need to table the free coffee, that's the only thing we'll do.
Do it just. What about just for us?
I actually feel like there's free coffee. I actually feel like as a
What, the
condition
free
of being
defense
allowed
fund?
to open, Whole Foods ought to have, the town ought to have some input into the Whole Foods marketing campaign. So that we don't have these kinds of special events that are driving and increasing our traffic volumes when that's really the kind of critical thing that we're concerned about. So, having an event where you're providing a voucher to the first 200 people who walk through the door is gonna cause 200 people to walk through the door that day. So I think we just have to contain those things, at least in the short term, in the near term, until we've had the opportunity to make sure that this all works.
I totally understand, we have the free coffee, I mean, this is the only thing, we don't do anything big like that, we have the free coffee, and we actually have a free reusable bag for the first, I think it's 100, I'll check, I think it might be 150. That is it.
Two.
That,
Two.
200, thank you. We do
I
150
don't think
sometimes.
people
and
are
two-
running down just for a
That-
free coffee.
But honestly, that's all we have. We don't have any.
I have no problem with that.
Right, we don't have any other special events planned. I mean, we just don't, we're just gonna do it quietly. So if you guys are okay with the coffee in the bag, you let me know.
I'm okay with the coffee in the back.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have you talk about
I would just ask,
I'm okay, even if I'm number 201.
I just asked again, you work with Lieutenant Carroll to make sure that we're okay for tomorrow.
Sure, I just wanna be on my phone, I'll take care of it right now, and I will get the Facebook canceled right now within the next 2 seconds. The person on the other end of that text is not gonna be very happy, and I will let you know as soon as we talk about how many went out, okay?
Thank you very much.
Please.
I don't know if you want us to help your market, because we need free coffee and no one comes.
So should we?
By the way, now you know why though.
So we're adjourning to the public hearing now?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Dresser.
By the way,